That was Hard Talk. I'm Saroja Coelho. You're listening to CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. Welcome to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, sitting in today as your host. With me today are Corey Funk, our show director, Abby Adeyemi, our studio technician, Kevin Nipatebo is producing our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel, and Heather Wells is in the newsroom with the CBC Manitoba news headlines.
Good morning. Well, some Winnipeg homeowners are not enthused about the idea of higher property taxes. Mayor Scott Gillingham is expected to present the first draft of the city budget tomorrow. Sources tell CBC News that budget will include a 5.59% increase, the largest the city has seen since 1990. We'll hear from some homeowners coming up. And Syrians in Manitoba continue watching news following the collapse of the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Karim Abid, a filmmaker in Winnipeg, has mixed feelings. He says he's trying to be optimistic, but is still scared because he has brothers who are in prison in Damascus. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells in the newsroom. Well, coming up on the first hour of the show, low back pain is a common condition that people can experience at any age, and most of us at some point in our lives will experience. House Dr. Raj Bardwaj tells us more about the causes of the condition and how to get some relief. We'll hear how some people are turning the Canada Post strike into extra cash. We'll also go to Ottawa and check in with Ryan Tumulty, a political reporter with the Toronto Star, for his take on the political news of the week. And up first, a Winnipeg reporter with the Canadian Press was tasked with looking at changing rights of LGBTQ plus people in some African countries. We'll speak with Dylan Robertson about his series. Well, taking a look now at the weather in Winnipeg today, periods of snow, 2 centimeters expected with a light breeze, high -8. In Brandon, periods of snow today, 2 centimeters as well, with some local blowing snow in the afternoon. It's going to be breezy with some gusts up to 50 kilometers an hour, especially around noon. High -6 in Brandon. For Thompson, clearing this morning, breezy with temperature falling to -27 in the afternoon. That'll make the wind chill feel like -39. So there's risk of a frostbite. And we are going to be heading up onto World Report in just a minute. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1 from Winnipeg.
On Cue with Tom Power.
If you found yourself in the past month stressed out, constantly grazing Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, Elif Shafak wants you to take a break. Elif is an exiled author from Turkey, now living in the UK. She'll be here to tell you about her new novel and the difference between information and knowledge.
Let's spend less time with information because it's not doing us any good.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young.
Members of the Altoona Police Department arrested Luigi Mangione, a 26-year-old male, on firearms charges.
NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch announcing an arrest in the shooting death of a health insurance CEO. Brian Thompson was gunned down outside a Manhattan hotel last Wednesday. Police were led on a 5-day manhunt. The suspect was cornered in a fast food restaurant yesterday after some help from an employee. Steve Futterman has the latest.
Just hours after the arrest,
we have a strong person of interest.
Officials in New York last night formally charged Luigi Mangione with murder.
We believe at this point our investigation is leaning toward he was acting alone.
The 26-year-old suspect made his initial court appearance in Pennsylvania, not far from the McDonald's restaurant where he was recognized from pictures shown on TV and in newspapers. New York Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch.
The suspect was in a McDonald's and was recognized by an employee who then called local police.
Although it's still not specifically clear what led him to allegedly kill United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, we are getting some hints. Mangione was carrying a manifesto.
It does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
United Healthcare is referred to in the manifesto. Those who have known the suspect for years say they would have never expected this. R.J. Martin was his roommate when they both lived in Hawaii.
I'm beyond shocked. It's unimaginable.
Mangione came from a wealthy family and was known to be an excellent student. He was valedictorian of his senior high school class and delivered the graduation speech.
It's been an incredible journey.
During the past few years, Mangione had been dealing with painful back issues, and in recent months this year seemed to cut himself off from friends and family. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Syrian rebels are vowing to find those who have committed war crimes under the former Assad regime. The leader of the HTS, or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, says many of those wanted are accused of torturing prisoners. President Bashar al-Assad fled the country after rebel forces took over the capital last week. Some warn of an extremely delicate political future, but others say this could mark a new beginning. Geir Pedersen is the UN Special Envoy to Syria.
But for that to happen, that there needed to be immediate de-escalation, that we should not see a fight between the different armed groups that have now entered into Damascus, and also taking into account that, of course, there are parts of the country that are not under the control of these armed groups.
Violent clashes continue in northern parts of Syria today between Turkish-backed forces and Kurdish fighters. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu takes the stand today in his long-running corruption trial. He smiled and shook hands with supporters as he arrived in a Tel Aviv courthouse. This is the first time an Israeli prime minister will testify as a criminal defendant. Netanyahu is accused of accepting thousands of dollars worth of cigars and champagne from a Hollywood producer. In exchange, Netanyahu allegedly helped him with personal and business interests. The prime minister is also accused of promoting certain media regulations in exchange for favorable coverage of himself and his family. Netanyahu denies any wrongdoing. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland will be making a housing announcement shortly, but reporters might have more questions about the fall economic statement planned for next week. It's coming very late in the season, and there's a lot riding on it for the Trudeau government. Let's bring in Janice McGregor from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, remind us, what is in this fall economic statement?
Marcia, it's mid-December now, and the finance minister has yet to release the public accounts, essentially the government's books, which tell us where things stand. But based on the math that the Parliamentary Budget Officer shared earlier this fall, the finance minister appears set to blow right past her previous pledge to keep the federal deficit below $40 billion. And not only because of all the social welfare programs rolling out like dental care and pharmacare, pressure from the incoming Trump administration has apparently forced the government's hand into a $1 billion package of additional equipment and personnel resources for police and border services agencies to crack down on the movement of illegal drugs and people smuggling. The writing on the wall for future defense spending also features big, bold billion-dollar figures. And then you throw in a populist affordability measure like the GST holiday that starts this weekend. And you see why, when the finance minister rises in the House next Monday to show us her books, the red won't just be on the holiday decorations.
So these economic updates are always significant, but the Trudeau government is under particular pressure right now. Tell us about that.
Well, look, because the House of Commons has been filibustered all fall, the Speaker had to intervene to ensure MPs even got to the series of votes that we're going to see this evening to approve over $20 billion worth of supplementary spending estimates. It's not at all clear whether this government can strike the deal it's going to need to pass implementation bills for whatever it's putting in next week's update. The Conservatives have offered to help pass a border package, but Freeland's admitted that as things stand, she doesn't have a partner to even actually deliver on the $250 GST rebate checks that she previously announced.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. More emergency departments were forced to close this past weekend in Ontario. At one point on Saturday, 5 rural ERs in southwestern Ontario had to shut their doors. As Julie Ireton tells us, many people are worried this is part of a trend that could lead to permanent closures.
I have tried my best to prevent those closures, so sometimes living here a little bit. Emergency nurse Iris Rawlings works at this small-town hospital in Carleton Place. It's one of at least 38 hospitals in Ontario that has had an ER or urgent care centre closure since 2022. Most are in rural areas, the majority due to nursing shortages. Dr. Alan Drummond works in an Eastern Ontario emergency. He wonders if a new model is needed.
Those days of every small town having an emergency department are regrettably over until we can develop some resilience in our healthcare system in terms of human resources.
Drummond suggests improving ER and diagnostic services at a central rural location and closing others.
It makes no sense in rural close environments to struggle to maintain 24-hour service.
Natalie Mara is executive director of the Ontario Health Coalition. That group campaigns for health improvements. She says rural residents, including many seniors, deserve emergency services in their communities.
It makes no sense that you've got literally thousands of elderly people driving all over the province to access health care.
The Ontario government has pledged hundreds of millions of dollars to train more nurses, but that will take time. Physicians in Northern Ontario warn of a worsening healthcare crisis for rural and northern residents. They say these populations have worse health outcomes and poorer access to healthcare compared to the rest of the province. Julie Ireton, CBC News, Carleton Place.
The search for unmarked graves at former residential schools is sensitive, emotional work. Often it begins with ground-penetrating radar, but on First Nations with densely wooded areas or fields, specialized dogs are being brought in to search the site. Rebecca Zandbergen has more, and a warning, some details might be distressing to listeners.
Kim Cooper and her shepherd Reki are training at an unmarked historic graveyard south of Ottawa. Reki runs the field, nose tight to the ground. Suddenly, after pacing one area, she stops, barks, and looks expectantly at Cooper.
Our best case scenario is that we get 3 dogs agree on exactly the same spot.
Cooper is the team leader with the Ontario Search and Rescue Volunteer Association. Her dog is certified in human remains detection. And since 2023, she and a team of handlers and dogs have been working with First Nations right across the country. 10 so far.
So the archaeological method is about layering the results of the different tools.
So survivor interviews, ground-penetrating radar, and now dogs. Dogs who can smell the chemicals that permeate the ground when a body decomposes.
So the more tools you get that agree that a given spot is of interest, the higher the confidence is that this is something that we need to look at.
At a recent Chiefs Assembly in Ottawa, Wajushikanigam Nation Chief Chris Skeed said dogs have been to the former residential school in his community near Kenora, Ontario, twice.
We knew of heavily wooded areas that we wanted to search as well.
Next month, Skeed's community is presenting a final report on what they've learned, but one thing is for sure.
We do not exhume any bodies. That's just not how we do things in Wajushikanigam.
Rebecca Zandbergen, CBC News, Ottawa.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, filling in as your host today. Here's what's coming up on the show. Most Canadian adults will experience low back pain at some point in their lives, and a study published earlier this year in the Canadian Medical Association Journal takes a look at that common condition. Our house doctor, Raj Bardwaj, will bring us the story. We'll also hear from Ryan Tumulty, a political reporter with the Toronto Star, about the Canadian government's reaction to the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, plus analysis of other political news of the week. We'll hear how some people are turning the Canada Post strike into extra cash. But up first, a Winnipeg reporter with the Canadian Press was tasked at looking at the changing rights of LGBTQ plus people in some African countries. We'll speak with Dylan Robertson about that series coming up on Information Radio. It's -10 with light snow at the Winnipeg airport. Heather Wells has the news headlines.
Good morning. A Winnipeg chiropractor is under police investigation for voyeurism after hidden cameras were found in the treatment rooms of his Portage Avenue practice. The cameras were discovered by the Manitoba Chiropractors Association while investigating a complaint about Dr. Robert Stitt. We're going to hear some details from CBC's I-Team coming up. Members of the Syrian community in Winnipeg have mixed feelings about the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Mohammed Jumaili is the former president of the Syrian Assembly of Manitoba. He says it's a big change for the Syrian community around the world. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells from the CBC Manitoba News Desk. Quick school note from the Prairie Rose School Division. Schools will be open and classes will resume in all regions today, but buses are canceled in all regions of that school division. So Prairie Rose is asking parents and guardians to make appropriate transportation arrangements for this morning. And joining us now with a look at the weather is Abby Adeyemi. What are the roads going to be like? What is it going to be like out there for people today as they get ready?
Guess what, Emily?
Tell me, Abby.
We're expecting snow again today.
Oh, no.
And that's like across board. Temperatures will actually be ranging from -8 down south to -17 in the northern parts of the province, with wind chills even making it feel colder. So you need to be prepared for, that risk of frostbite is spotted here and there in most of the region, especially in northern regions. Currently, Winnipeg, we are at -9, light snow falling outside. The forecast for today calls for periods of snow throughout the day. We should see about 2 centimeters accumulation that's added to what we have on the ground at this time, and it will feel cold with high around -8. The wind chill is going to make it feel even colder this morning into the afternoon, and then for tonight we'll see some clear skies and then some blowing snow in open areas. That's will be coming from the north. In other regions, we're also seeing this snow expected across board. Western and Manitoba will see snow and blowing snow with cold temperatures and wind chill even making it feel colder, while for the central region we're looking at light snow with chilly temperatures. The Parkland similar, already seeing snow at this time. That should taper off, and then the cold will continue into the afternoon. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at -9, and we just only moved to -8 later, though the wind chill is something you need to take into consideration.
It's been a snowy winter so far, hasn't it, Abby?
It has. We're waiting for this, and now it's here.
But I know you like it because it gets you even more in the Christmas spirit.
Into the season.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adeyemi. He's also our studio technician and our resident Christmas lover, enthusiast, maybe we could call him. With him in the control room is Kevin Nipatebo, who produces the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. And with me in studio is Corey Funk, our show director and traffic reporter. What's happening out there?
I wish I was dressed like Abby right now.
Right?
I can't quite trust. He got the plaid furry hat and the plaid for the matches and the plaid furry and then the plaid shirt. It looks very wintry, warm lumberjack.
And it's that Canadian plaid, the red and black checkers. It looks great.
Yeah, very stereotypical Canadian right now. Love it. In terms of the roads right now, I'll tell you the highways look way better than they did yesterday. No closed highways today. Most of them actually look like they've been recently plowed, looking pretty good. I will note that Highway 75, the entirety of Highway 75 from Winnipeg to the border, still being reported as covered, so might be a little bit treacherous there. So heads up on Highway 75 this morning. Here in the city, one thing to note, the southbound median lane on Main at Chief Peguis is blocked by a downed traffic standard right in the intersection this morning. So apparently crews are on scene, says the city, and they're working on repairs, but it is blocking that northbound median lane right now on Main. So northbound and southbound, if you're going on Main at Chief Peguis, keep right to pass is the advice. If you see anything else though going on, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
It's 6:15. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg, around the world on the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel and the CBC Listen app. I'm Emily Brass. Well, a note, the following story contains details that might be troubling for some listeners, so please take care while listening. If you're a reader of the Winnipeg Free Press, you may know the name Dylan Robertson. He's that paper's former Ottawa bureau chief and now works as the International Affairs affairs reporter for the Canadian Press. Dylan was recently awarded the R. James Travers Foreign Corresponding Fellowship. And with that fellowship, he traveled to Cameroon, Kenya, and Ghana to explore LGBTQ plus issues in those countries. And this led to a series of articles published by the Canadian Press and carried in the Winnipeg Free Press. CBC Up to Speed host Faith Fundal spoke yesterday with Dylan Robinson.
Why was it something you wanted to do?
I think Canada is known globally for its support for LGBTQ people, and we're seeing some trends in the world that are quite troubling in terms of freedom of speech, freedom from being arrested. It's playing out a lot in Africa, and we're sort of a leader not just in refugee resettlement, but in supporting groups on the ground. And I'm not sure if Canadians understand just how much clout we have with this and just how threatened these rights are in places across Africa right now.
And so you visited 3 countries. You spoke to many folks. What was the most striking thing, or what were some of the most striking things that came up as you heard from these folks?
I think the resilience of people, and I think that's really corny to say, but you have people with traditional tribal identities. They might not call themselves gay or lesbian. They might call themselves Kojo Besia in Ghana or Sasso. And they're trying to sort of reclaim their history, sort of like Two-Spirit peoples in Canada have been doing. I think the work that people are doing under incredibly challenging circumstances, we're talking about violent protests in the street. We're talking about teenagers getting arrested in Cameroon for being gay, looking gay, appearing non-binary, just because they don't have enough money to pay an officer for a bribe. And yet people are still getting up every day and trying to fight for better.
That must have been quite the thing to hear and to witness as a reporter. I mean, what did you think when you were hearing from these folks and they were describing that fear and that very real sense of they could be something very bad could happen to them if they're caught?
I mean, it was quite striking to do these interviews with people because you know that even putting their name in an article, puts them on the internet. Some of them are used to being visible, but a lot of them said, look, I want people to know this is happening. I want Canadians to know what's going on in my country. It really had an impact as a journalist to get the trust of people to sort of carry their voices, but also as a gay man, knowing that I grew up in this country, I kind of, won the lottery, basically. And it's really not the same around the world. And it has gotten better in different places, but the trends that we're seeing right now against women, against gender policies, we're seeing this across the world. But in Africa, there's a huge push by American evangelicals and the Russian government to sort of suppress minority identities.
Did it ever occur to you that there was also personal risk for you as you sought out these stories or sought out these folks to talk, because you are, as a gay man, that is also part of what these countries are targeting, right? Or who these countries are targeting?
Yeah, it took a lot of thought to think about where to go. I chose 3 countries where Canada has close ties. I did not go to Uganda, where we're seeing this. It's called, the Kill the Gays bill. That's what people refer to it as, where homosexual propaganda is a serious offense. And even interviewing someone and having that on your person could put you in jail because you're holding, material that might promote homosexuality. I chose 3 countries that are generally safe, but you're always kind of watching your back. And it's a stereotype that all of Africa is full of warm people, but it's true. They want to know why you came, what you think of the country. And I had a backstory. My phone had a photo of a very close friend who's a girl. I was wearing a ring because people in countries like Cameroon will ask you how many kids you have. That's one of the first questions, and it's a bit complicated if I was honest with them. And I really am glad that my employer backed me in doing this assignment, because I think often people don't want to put their employees at risk, but I think we took strong precautions. I uploaded all of my stuff before crossing any border and deleted it off my laptop. But yeah, kind of never really felt 100% safe there, but I did feel a lot of community from people on the ground.
You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that folks don't necessarily have this appreciation of how much leverage Canada might have. Can you talk more about what you meant by that?
So I think that Canada has a legacy in Africa that we didn't actively colonize anybody on the continent. You can raise questions about our mining projects, but really people look to us as a country that isn't having this colonial idea of the US, of Britain, of France. In the 1960s, we did a lot of development work right after post-colonial independence, where we were helping Cameroon to get a bilingual English-French education system. A lot of the same work happened in Ghana. We're sort of known as being a helpful partner on the continent. And so it gives us a bit of leverage when we want to talk about human rights, because we don't tend to sing it from the rooftops. Our diplomats are not outwardly pressuring people unless that's what people on the ground want us to do. And we've seen, you know, the people interviewed in the series, some of them got Canadian funding, but even ones that don't, they talk about how we understand how to do things from an African point of view. There's a lot of Ghanaians in places like Toronto, like Winnipeg, like Vancouver, that are advising our foreign service on how to raise these things in Ghana because they're quite politically explosive. But there's a way of framing the issue that kind of speaks to, you know, things that Ghanaians value, like having a reputation for democracy and free speech, and how, you know, a bill to criminalize LGBT identity might go against those concepts.
That was Dylan Robertson with the Canadian Press speaking with CBC host Faith Fundal. His series has been published in the Winnipeg Free Press. Well, back pain is one of the top reasons people visit doctors or other healthcare providers. It's also one of the most common reasons people miss work. Back in February, CBC's House Dr. Raj Bardwaj told Marcy Marcusa about a recently published study in the Canadian Medical Association Journal and how the study has some positive and some not so great news for people who experience back pain. Here's that conversation.
Yeah, so it was actually a review of other papers from 2011 to 2023, and the authors basically wanted to look at what happens to people with acute back pain. So, you know, do they get better over time? Do they go on to develop chronic back pain, or what? So they looked at 95 studies, included a total of about 18,000 people with various kinds of back pain. And when they crunched the numbers, they found that people's back pain generally gets better within 6 weeks, which is good news. But when it doesn't, it tends to stick around for a long amount of time. It often causes a lot of pain and disability, which is bad news. They also found that if you get acute low back pain, then you tend to get it again. So, you know, you get back pain, it gets better. About 70% of people will have a recurrence of their back pain within a year. So they propose that if healthcare workers can do a better job at identifying people who are at higher risk, you know, maybe taking a longer time to get better, and really focus our efforts on those folks, then maybe we can avoid them ending up with the chronic low back pain. Now, there were some limitations to this review, including that it really only applies to people between about 18 and 60, and they had to look at back pain as sort of a diagnosis of its own, and it really isn't in real life. It's a symptom that can be caused by so many different kinds of underlying issues.
Like what? Like what are some of the common things that would cause people to have back pain?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one that, you know, I mean, we focus a lot of classes in medical school just on back pain. So it's a complicated symptom, but the most common thing I would say is it's due to mechanical problems, mechanical things like muscle strains, ligament strains, you know, tendon issues. That would be the group that is the most common cause of simple low back pain. You can have back pain because of problems with the discs between the bones of the spine. You can have problems with the bones themselves, you know, arthritis type things in the joints of the spine. Some of those things can run in families and affect even relatively young people and give them sort of chronic back pain in their 20s and 30s. But that's rare. There are nerves that come from your spine and travel down your legs, and those can get irritated or pinched, and that can give you back pain, often gives you leg pain more than back pain. And then to confuse things even more, back pain can come from a problem that we don't think of as being sort of in your back, like kidney pain or something like that, you know, kidney stones, for example. So it's understandably scary for a lot of people because they think, geez, I've got this terrible pain. It must be due to a terrible problem. And that's the thing is the severity of the pain isn't always related to the seriousness of the problem causing the pain.
Really? So how do doctors diagnose the cause of back pain then?
Yeah, so I mean, most of the time it's about understanding the pain first, right? So you can help us to figure out the cause of your back pain by thinking of the things that I'm going to mention here. So we want to know, first of all, how did this back pain start? Did you wake up with it? Was it the day after you started doing some gardening for the first time? Did it start immediately after you bent over to pick something up? We want to know sort of the onset of it. We also want to know what the pain feels like. Is it dull? Is it achy over a big area? Is it sharp? Is it localized to a specific area? Does it come and go like a spasm, or is it there all the time? Or could you get relief by not moving in certain ways? Or say, nope, it's unrelenting, doesn't matter what I do, but it doesn't get any better at all. And we want to know other things like, does it radiate? Does it start in your low back, but then it seems to run down your leg, or start in your mid back and sort of runs in around the front to your groin? We also want to know, is it associated with other things? Is there numbness or tingling or difficulty with specific movements? All of these are huge clues. But apart from the history, we also want to know about the rest of your medical history. And we also want to do a good physical exam. We want to test your different nerves and different muscles and stuff to see if they could be a cause of the pain or unrelated. But most people don't need any blood tests or MRIs or anything like that to diagnose back pain that has been present for a short time.
When might x-rays or other tests be necessary?
It depends again a lot on the story. So if there's a story of trauma, like my back pain started when I got hit by a car, well, then obviously, it makes sense there might be a bone problem, and x-rays or CT scans or something can help us to look for that damage. There are things that make our medical spidey senses tingle that make us think, might need to do some extra stuff in this case. So we refer to those sometimes as red flags, things that need to be addressed more urgently. So things like back pain with fever, or back pain with weight loss, or a history of cancer or IV drug use, or back pain that also gives you nerve problems like numbness and tingling in the groin. And if you have back pain plus you can't control your bowel or bladder anymore, then that's a prompt visit to the emergency department, please, to make sure it's not a spinal problem. If you're over 50, and especially over about 65, and you've never had back pain, and you get a first episode of severe back pain, then that's something that makes our spidey senses tingle as well, because that could be a sign of cancer or, a fracture in your back or something like that. But if you think about the back pain that you've had in the past, it's pretty likely that none of those red flags were part of the pain, because most of the time, even though back pain is very painful, it's not usually caused by something really serious. It doesn't usually have those red flags. But if you're worried, then for sure seek out a personalized assessment, get somebody who can get a good history and do a good exam. Don't just rely on Google and your medicine cabinet.
What can people do to treat their back pain?
So first of all, simple over-the-counter medications, so Tylenol, Advil, things like that, along with ice or heat can help quite a bit. One of the main things that they're probably doing is to reduce your pain so that you can keep moving, because we don't want you to just lie on the couch for hours or days at a time. We used to prescribe rest for back pain, but we don't do that anymore. We tell people, look, you don't need to rest your back, you need to protect your back from specific movements that make the pain worse.
Dr. Bardwash, thank you.
My pleasure.
That was our CBC House Doctor, Raj Bardwash, speaking with Marcy Marcusa. Still to come in this hour of the show, we'll get some business news with Crystalie Ramlakan, and she says the Bank of Canada is making its next interest rate announcement tomorrow. We'll hear more on what to expect. The news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's -9. Kind of a soft morning, periods of snow through the day, about 2 centimeters, a high of -8, and then the sky clears and the cold moves in tonight. A Winnipeg chiropractor is under investigation after the regulatory body discovered hidden cameras in his treatment rooms and called police. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargout reports.
Dr. Robert Stitt has been a chiropractor for more than 25 years. In January, a patient made a complaint to the Manitoba Chiropractors Association, alleging Stitt had inappropriately touched her back. He denied the allegations and told the regulatory body that he could prove he did nothing wrong because he had video of his interactions with the patient. The association called Winnipeg police after learning Stitt had hidden cameras in treatment rooms. All this information was detailed in search warrant documents police filed to seize those cameras and video recordings. Stitt's office is now closed, but the association won't say if he's still licensed to practice. No charges have been laid. Police are still investigating. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some Winnipeg homeowners say the city should be looking at cutting spending, not raising taxes. Sources tell CBC News Mayor Scott Gillingham will announce a 5.95% property tax hike in tomorrow's city budget. Lee Henningson lives in Wolseley. He says he'd rather pay more taxes to the province to fund education than give that money to the city.
Generally, I don't have a problem with property taxes. Where it goes is more the issue. I find the city wastes a lot of money on things.
Gillingham has hinted he will focus on road repairs and policing. The property tax hike would be Winnipeg's largest in 34 years. Members of the Syrian community in Winnipeg have mixed feelings about the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Mohammed Jumaili is the former president of the Syrian Assembly of Manitoba. He says this is a big change for the Syrian community around the world. Happiness tempered with concern about rebuilding the country.
I have a big optimism, to be honest. I know the future will be good. And again, everybody agree that the future, even if it's bad, it will not be bad like before.
Others say they are still worried, waiting to hear about loved ones who may still be in prison in Syria. New York City prosecutors have charged the suspect in last week's shooting of an American health executive with murder. Last night, police in Altoona, Pennsylvania held a news conference. They say 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was found inside a McDonald's restaurant and arrested by Officer Tyler Fry.
He was wearing a blue medical mask. We asked him to pull it down. Me and my partner and I recognized him immediately, just from what we saw in the media with photos, videos. Didn't even think twice about it. We knew that was our guy.
The victim, Brian Thompson, was gunned down in New York City. Investigators say they found a handwritten 3-page document indicating the suspect had some ill will towards corporate America. Josh Shapiro is the governor of Pennsylvania. He is denouncing the alleged crime.
Violence can never be used to address political differences or to address a substantive difference or to try and prove some ideological point. That is not what we do in a civilized society.
Mangione is being held without bail. He made a brief court appearance last night. His family released a statement saying, quote, "We only know what we have read in the media. Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson." A mass evacuation is underway in the Philippines right now. About 87,000 people are being ordered to leave a central region one day after a volcano briefly erupted. A towering ash plume and super hot steams of gas and debris came rushing down. No reports of any casualties. However, eruptions could follow. And it is Nobel Prize collecting day for the Canadian computer scientist nicknamed the godfather of AI. Geoffrey Hinton and co-laureate John Hopfield are receiving their shared Nobel Prize for physics at a gala ceremony in Stockholm. The two are being honored for their study of machine learning. Hinton is a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, while Hopfield is a professor at Princeton University. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7, and you can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
And we have your prize money waiting for you, Heather.
Oh,
Best
yeah,
news
do
reader.
What for, I
The
wonder?
check's in the mail.
Oh, yeah, exactly. During a strike. Perfect.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells from the CBC Manitoba News Desk. It's now 6:35, and Abby Adiemi has an update on the weather.
It's going to be a cold day across the regions. For Winnipeg at this point, we're looking at light snow outside. We're expecting about 2 centimeters. It will be chilly. A high will only get to -8 today, but the wind chill will make it feel cold. And then for tonight, clear skies, though some blowing snow will be spotted here here and there, and temperatures will be dropping to around minus 26. The wind chill is going to be feeling near around minus 38. But right now in Winnipeg, minus 9 with light snow. Brandon is at minus 11. Light snow we're seeing. We're going to see about 2 centimeters also added to what's on the ground at this time. You get a high of minus 6. For the Pembina Valley region, we're looking at temperatures around minus 7. 2 centimeters of snow expected. The wind chill is going to make it even feel colder. Currently, the high is going to be around minus 8. Dauphin at minus 9 with light snow. For the Parkland region, we're looking at the snow will be ending around the noon period, followed by clearing skies and then blowing snow possible this afternoon, with temperatures dropping to around a minus 19. Just be prepared for cold conditions, though, because there's a risk of frostbite in the forecast also. Gimli at minus 10. The Interlake region will see snow today. 2 centimeters expected, high of around a minus 9. Also colder with the wind chill factored in. For the Power and Flin Flon, we're looking at temperatures around minus 17. We're seeing snow at this time. That should end sometime this morning, followed by a mix of sun and clouds and breezy conditions from the northwest. The wind chill is going to make it feel like minus 32 as temperatures drop to minus 22 for that region. Moving north to Thompson, minus 16. We're seeing at this time drifting snow is on the menu for the day. The snow will end around the noon period, followed by a mix of sun and clouds. Similar conditions in Churchill, minus 20. Light snow we're seeing. That would bring some breezy conditions from the northwest, and temperatures will be dropping to around minus 21 for folks up in Churchill. Though with the wind chill factored in, it's going to feel like minus 34. There's a risk of frostbite in play there, so you have to bundle up. Overall, the province will be seeing like wintry conditions, with southern regions feeling warmer.
Well, it's a bit of a winter wonderland. It might be cold and inconvenient, but it is beautiful.
It is beautiful outside.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adeyemi. And joining us now with a look at the traffic is Corey Funk. Good morning.
Good morning. You had a beautiful run to work this morning on the sidewalks. Are actually nice and grippy. It wasn't too bad, actually. Not too windy, actually, either. At least on my face. Felt pretty good compared to the past few days. In terms of the commute right now, highways are actually looking way better than yesterday. No highway closures this morning. Highway 75, though, is being reported still as covered on Manitoba 511. So maybe kind of snowy, slippery. So just be careful if you're hitting Highway 75 this morning from Winnipeg to the border. Here in the city, Chief Peguis and Main, right at that intersection, actually. So southbound Main Street, the median lane is blocked by a downed traffic standard on the intersection. Crews are working on that, but they're blocking the northbound median lane. So if you're in the median lane, northbound and southbound, keep right to get around that if you're heading down Main at Chief Peguis. If you see anything else still going on, give me a call. That number, 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
That's Corey Funk. He's also our show director. Well, it's time now for some business news. Crystalie Ramlakan is here with the CBC Business Report. Good morning, Crystalie.
Hey, good morning, Emily.
So the Bank of Canada is making its next interest rate announcement tomorrow. What are we going to expect from that?
Yeah, so forecasters are predicting another 0.5 percentage point cut, which would bring the key interest rate down to 3.25%. Now, why is this? Well, in part, the latest jobs numbers, unemployment has jumped to 6.8%, the highest jobless rate since 2017 outside of the pandemic. And CIBC also says it sees the jumbo rate cut because, well, forecasters expect the central bank to bring its key interest rate down to 3% or less in the coming months anyway. So its chief economist says if we need more relief next year, why not give the economy more of what it needs earlier? Now, the Bank of Canada has lowered its key lending rate 4 times in a row since June. In October, it cut its policy rate by 0.5 percentage point as well, and that was in response to inflation returning to its 2% target. So at the time, Governor Tiff Macklem wouldn't say whether the central bank expects to deliver another large rate cut, and instead signaled that the size of the next rate decision would be dependent on data. And, you know, when we look at inflation, it is expected to remain around the 2% target moving forward. And the cuts have also been in response to, of course, the lackluster economic growth of the economy. And Macklem has said that the bank now wants to see the economy regain momentum. So for all those reasons, that's why they're thinking that we'll see another 0.5 percentage point rate cut tomorrow.
Okay. So shifting over now to some labor news from the Canadian National Railway.
Yes, so CN has reached a tentative agreement with the union representing its mechanical workers and clerks. So CN says, though, details of this 4-year agreement will not be released publicly until it is ratified. And the current collective agreement is set to expire at the end of the year, December 31st. Now, just 2 weeks ago, though, workers had voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike that would have seen workers walk off the job as soon as January 1st. So there's two groups of workers here. It includes one group of 2,100 mechanics, technicians, crane operators, machinists, and electricians. And then the other group is of 1,500 administrators and customer support staff. Now, the union says this agreement marks a significant step forward in securing improved conditions and protections for members, and workers had been calling for improved job security, higher wages, and better working conditions. Now, last summer, you might remember CN and its rival CPKC shut down operations when they locked up more than 9,000 engineers, mechanics, and yard workers. That work stoppage ended with federal intervention less than 17 hours after that lockout began. So hopefully there will not be another strike or lockout if they ratify this agreement.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, fast food restaurants are hungry for customers. We've been seeing more deals from them. How long could that last?
Yeah, that's right. So a recent onslaught of promotions has taken shape at just about every fast food joint across the country. And the phenomenon has intensified into what industry watchers have dubbed a value war. And they're predicting that the battle isn't going away anytime soon and may even hit new heights next year. So, consumer habits shifted after COVID-19 lockdowns. When measures were lifted, people spent the cash that they had from government supports and savings from not being able to do anything else or go out. But as prices, interest rates, and inflation have spiked, consumers have pulled back. And the decrease in customers has persisted even as inflation has eased. And that's left the quick serve industry with a big question. How do we get customers back into restaurants and spending again? So the answer so far has been promotions. And, fast food joints, they try to lure you in so they can also upsell you and work at trying to bring you back another time. So like we were saying, how long could this last? Well, here's Meera Patel, who is a marketing consultant and is the founder of MJP & Co. And what she says can encourage this behavior from these fast food restaurants.
The only thing I would say is vote with your dollar, right? I mean, when that's kind of our purchasing power, is to make sure that our money is going to places that we want to support. Cost of living is increasing anyway, so we might as well put our money towards something we would be a bit more cognizant of our health and of our word of mouth, of our behavior.
But, these fast food wars can be dangerous, a lesson that Popeyes has learned when its sales fell. But the CEO says it's working to reverse that trend with new deals, which have boosted traffic and sales.
Okay, so Crystal Lee, what's happening in the markets so far this morning?
In Europe, markets are lower as investors gear up for the latest U.S. inflation report this week. So Germany, the UK, and France are all down. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is down. Oil is down 26 cents to $68.11 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up $17.70 to $2,677.40 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is slightly up 0.01 of a cent, but it's still sitting at 70.6 cents U.S.
Not good news for people who are thinking of going across the border. Thank you so much, Crystal Lee.
Okay, thanks, Emily.
That was Crystal Lee Ramlakan with the Business News. It's 6:45. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg, around the world on the CBC Listen app and on the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. I'm Emily Brass. Well, for some, the Canada Post strike is very inconvenient. It's holding up everything from paychecks to grandma's birthday card and all those holiday cards too. But for others, the mail strike is something else. Opportunity knocking. Here's CBC's Danielle Nurman.
Natasha Francis owns an online store in Hamilton that specializes in modest clothing, like long-sleeve shirts and hijabs. But when Canada Post went on strike, her shipping costs skyrocketed. To save money, she started delivering local orders herself. Then she thought,
maybe I could capitalize on this and, deliver other people's stuff as well.
She posted an ad on Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji, and her expectations were low.
I honestly thought, let's try it, but I didn't think I would get any real hits on it. And I was really surprised that everyone is desperate to get their stuff out.
In Kingston, Cameron Hurto had the same idea. Deliver the mail and make some extra cash.
Odessa, I've been to Belleville, I've been to Yarker.
And he's put a lot of clicks on his truck.
Brockville.
Cameron describes himself as a burly private citizen delivering everything from prescriptions to paychecks. And it's proving to be pretty lucrative.
I've probably helped 50 to 60 people, and I think I've probably made about $2,500. It's nuts.
Guy Hoburn is a professor of business, economics, and public policy at Western University. He says the strike has made it very clear. People still use Canada Post.
I think this shows that this is really an essential service that we have. Even though we live in an electronic age, we're still very reliant on physical delivery of letters, packages.
Canada Post has the monopoly on letter mail. And it's easy to forget just how much still gets delivered this way until, Guy says, it stops showing up.
Kids will want to be writing to Santa this Christmas. And of course, many people receive their bills by mail. Some people receive their checks and their pay by mail as well. So I think this is making it very clear we're still very reliant on regular post as part of our normal everyday lives.
According to Payments Canada, 18% of small and medium-sized companies still pay their staff by check. And a lot of those checks come in the mail. Guy Hoburn says the strike is also a reminder that Canada Post boldly goes where no one else will.
So private operators may only deliver to certain parts of the country. They may not get into the far rural regions. So that's the social element, and that's the social mandate, which is to make sure that there is delivery to all parts of Canada.
At an affordable price. Sending a Christmas card to your neighbor costs the same as mailing it from Tofino to Truro, Nova Scotia. $1.15. But it may cost you more than that to get your cards delivered this season. Natasha Francis charges $2 per kilometer.
And it starts from when I leave my house. So however far they are, if they want to pay, then they can pay.
On the other hand, Cameron Hurto says he just charges what feels right. Unless you want something really special.
This one lady asked me if I could go to a school dressed as Santa, and I was like, well, that's a bit much. I wasn't looking to be, Tim Allen or anything. But I could probably swing that.
For an extra $10. For CBC Radio, I'm Danielle Nurman.
Thanks, Danielle. And for more stories about how money shapes our lives in ways big and small, check out the Cost of Living podcasts. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts, or you can also catch the show Cost of Living later this morning at 11:30 a.m. here on CBC Radio 1.
Enjoy this festive season.
You coming? Why, to the North Pole, of course.
Enjoy the magic.
Happy birthday.
Hilarity.
I triple dog dare you.
We're all in for a very big treat.
Enjoy the excitement.
Tremendous, gargantuan, spectacular.
And wonder.
From the moment I met you, it's been an adventure.
Enjoy the holidays. Watch free on CBC Gem.
10 minutes before 7 o'clock, you're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass. Well, governments around the world, including here in Canada, are keeping a close eye on Syria. After the fall of the Assad regime on Sunday, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau posted his reaction on X. He said, quote, "The fall of Assad's dictatorship ends decades of brutal oppression. A new chapter for Syria can begin here." But while this historic event is certainly commanding the government's attention, the House of Commons appears more focused on domestic issues. Ryan Tumulty is here to break it down. He's a political reporter with the Toronto Star. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
So what more can you tell us about the Canadian government's reaction to the fall of Bashar al-Assad?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned the Prime Minister's comments off the top. I would say so far it appears like what the government is trying to do here is take a wait-and-see approach. They are not rushing in to make any sort of sweeping pronouncements or anything like that. There's a fair bit at stake here. There are Canadians detained in Syria who have been detained for a large chunk of the war. And depending on who you ask, the Canadian government has so far been either unwilling or unable to bring those Canadians home. And then, there's just the broader questions about regional stability, about what this means for Israel, about what this means for Turkey, and some of the other countries in the neighborhood who have an interest in Syria. The rebel group that has seized power, this group HTS, it is listed as a terror entity here in Canada. So I think there's a fair bit of concern about what comes next. Certainly people are welcoming the end of the Assad regime, but I think are maybe nervous about who will be leaving the country in the future.
So what do you expect are the greatest concerns for the Canadian government as far as the rebels are, now being in control?
Yeah, I would say, obviously what happens with the Canadians who are who need to be repatriated is a big issue. The government would have to deal with this group directly. That is going to be a challenge, especially given their designation as a terror entity. So there are going to be lots of issues there. And then, that just broader that issue of regional stability, I think, is top of mind. We're still dealing with a situation. We've seen, for example, Israel respond quite forcefully to this because they're not sure what to make of it. And, of course, they're already at war. So I think there are broad concerns about what happens next, but no one really knows. So they are just taking this sort of one step at a time.
Okay. So back now to the domestic front. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, announced yesterday she's going to give her fall economic update next Monday, December 16th. What do you expect from that?
I don't expect a big update. I don't expect a big set of new measures, in part because we've already seen a bunch of new measures from the government. We've seen, for example, this GST cut, which goes into effect on Saturday. And then we have seen, this promise of $250 checks. Those two measures add up to about $6.5 billion. That's a lot of new spending for the government. So the idea of doing more big measures on top of that, I don't really see that happening. That said, this is a government that is looking to change the channel, change direction. So they may have more up their sleeve for this fiscal update to try to change things. But then they will be stuck trying to get them through a parliament that really isn't moving right now.
Yeah. And then the ongoing Canada Post strike has been having a negative financial impact on many businesses in this country. What's the latest on the strike?
Yeah, I mean, so far we have not seen any real big movement. The two sides exchanged offers over the weekend, but it doesn't look like that has resolved anything. I guess the only positive is that was the first time the two sides have talked in a little while. The federal government pulled back mediators from those talks, basically saying that nothing was happening. So they sent both sides back to their corners to think a little harder and come back with new ideas. But it doesn't seem like that's broken the logjam. It seems like they are really stuck here.
How much pressure is the government facing to end the strike?
Government's facing a fair bit of pressure. Certainly they're hearing it from business groups, but Canadians don't get mail much anymore. This isn't the kind of thing that is impacting everyday Canadians in a huge way just yet. Certainly, I know small businesses are feeling the heat from this and feeling the pressure, and it's making it difficult for them right at Christmas time. But I'm not sure that the government has enough pressure that they're willing to jump in and end another strike. Certainly, they did not want to jump into the rail strikes earlier this year or the port strikes, but felt they had no other choice. So, I think they're going to try to avoid getting entangled in this again.
And meanwhile, there was a third non-confidence vote yesterday in the House of Commons. How did that play out?
I mean, well, spoiler alert: the government survived. We didn't start this we didn't start this interview in a weird way. The Conservatives crafted this confidence vote. It was their opposition day motion. They used words that NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has used to describe the government. His criticisms of the government were the central point of this opposition day motion. They were definitely trying to either bring down the government or to embarrass the NDP leader by using his own words and then having him not vote for them. I think you're going to keep seeing pressure like this. The Conservatives are really eager to have an election. They have a lead that would result in a frankly solid, whopping majority. And so they want to go to the polls as soon as possible because that can only erode over time. So, I think for the Conservatives, they are going to keep this pressure up. It will be interesting to see how they approach Parliament when it comes back in February. But certainly that pressure is there.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. We appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Ryan Tumulty is a political reporter with the Toronto Star. Heather Wells has the news headlines.
Good morning. A Winnipeg chiropractor is under police investigation for voyeurism after hidden cameras were found in the treatment rooms of his Portage Avenue practice. We'll hear from the I-Team on this. Members of the Syrian community in Winnipeg have mixed feelings about the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Mohammed Jumaili, former president of the Syrian Assembly of Manitoba, says it's a big change. Happiness tempered with concern about rebuilding the country. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells from the CBC Manitoba Newsroom. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, and we do have a traffic update on Abinogi-Mickinaw just past St. Mary's. There's a multi-vehicle collision. It's blocking the westbound curb lane. Keep left to pass. If you see anything else out there, give us a call on our commuter line 204-788-3093. And still to come on Information Radio, the mayor is slated to announce the largest property tax hike for Winnipeg in 34 years. But how do Winnipeggers feel about paying more? We're going to check in with a few homeowners to hear their thoughts. And without them, our roads, mines, and railways wouldn't run. Who are they and why they're so desperately needed in Manitoba? CBC's Jim Agapito spoke to the special Jacks and Jills of all trades who say you should join them if you're looking for a rewarding career. World Report is coming up next.
Today on The Current.
Please won't you be my neighbor?
Neighborhood gatherings are often something to look forward to in the holiday season, but getting to know your neighbors is good for your health as well. And communities across Canada are finding new ways to make that happen. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. For the first time ever, Israel's prime minister is taking the stand as a criminal defendant. Benjamin Netanyahu is accused of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. He faces 3 different corruption cases, and after years of investigations, legal proceedings, and delays, he is now in court to deny any wrongdoing. The CBC's Tom Perry is outside the courthouse this morning in Tel Aviv. Tom, what is happening around you?
Netanyahu's case is being heard in a bunker, in a basement in this building. And out here in front of the court are dueling demonstrations for and against the Israeli prime minister. Now, I spoke to one anti-Netanyahu protester. Her name is Yael Navon. She's worried about Israel's hostages in Gaza, that Netanyahu is either too distracted by this case to focus on them, or that he's maybe even dragging out the war to try to escape justice. Here's what she told me.
I just want him to leave his position, to stop, tell us that he's taking care of us, because he doesn't. I understand he can't do that. He can't.
So that was an anti-Netanyahu voice, and I said there are 2 protests going on here, one for, one against. Asas Sokolowski is taking part in the pro-Netanyahu demonstration. He told me why he thinks this case should not even be happening.
We're in war, and the Prime Minister of Israel, whoever he is, shouldn't be subjected to 3 times a week, 6 hours a day testimony on something that has been mostly debunked.
So that's 2 protests out here in front of the courthouse in Tel Aviv with 2 very different messages.
Tom, what has the court heard from Netanyahu so far?
Well, Benjamin Netanyahu has told the court that the allegations against him are a drop in the ocean, and that he's busy working on matters of world importance. He says he's worked hard for Israel his whole life, that he's been attacked and libeled like no one else, and he calls the case against him absurd.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
The CBC's Tom Perry reporting from Tel Aviv. The leader of the rebel group now in control of Syria wants to investigate war crimes committed under the former regime. HTS, or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, says those crimes include the torture of prisoners. There's a warning from the country's UN special envoy. He says all Syrians must be represented or risk more violent uprisings. Crystal Gomansing has the latest from London.
This could be the real beginning of something new for Syria.
Geir Pedersen, the UN Special Envoy to Syria, voicing optimism from Geneva. He says the new patchwork government in place in Syria must work together for the good of all citizens.
Then we could start to look at lifting sanctions, increase humanitarian support, start economic recovery.
Violent clashes are still taking place in the northeast, but in Damascus this morning, shell casings were being swept up and banks are opening as people embrace what appears to be calm. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, also known as HTS, overthrew the Assad regime in 11 days, ending a 13-year civil war that was locked in a stalemate.
Freedom rings like a bell, too loud for ears accustomed to silence.
Hiba Abdul Hakim Kasawad is searching for 3 generations of men in her family. All were taken away in the middle of the night years ago.
I was a 12-year-old child witnessing her brothers and father and grandfather dragged before my own eyes.
There were cheers when those held in the infamous Sednaya prison were freed, but many more remain missing. More than 100,000 are said to have been disappeared under Assad's rule. It's a combination of grief and hope as Syrians emerge from under a deposed dictator and the world watches. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
We are learning more this morning about the man arrested in the shooting death of U.S. health insurance executive Brian Thompson. The 26-year-old suspect was arrested in Pennsylvania following a massive 5-day-long manhunt. Steve Futterman has the latest.
Just hours after the arrest,
we have a strong person of interest.
Officials in New York last night formally charged Luigi Mangione with murder.
We believe at this point our investigation is leaning toward he was acting alone.
The 26-year-old suspect made his initial court appearance in Pennsylvania. not far from the McDonald's restaurant where he was recognized from pictures shown on TV and in newspapers. New York Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch.
The suspect was in a McDonald's and was recognized by an employee who then called local police.
Although it's still not specifically clear what led him to allegedly kill United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, we are getting some hints. Mangione was carrying a manifesto.
It does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
United Healthcare is referred to in the manifesto. Those who have known the suspect for years say they would have never expected this. R.J. Martin was his roommate when they both lived in Hawaii.
I'm beyond shocked. It's unimaginable.
Mangione came from a wealthy family and was known to be an excellent student. He was valedictorian of his senior high school class and delivered the graduation speech.
It's been an incredible journey.
During the past few years, Mangione had been dealing with painful back issues, and in recent months this year, seemed to cut himself off from friends and family. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Brazil's president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, is in hospital recovering from brain surgery. His government has published a medical note. It says surgeons needed to drain a bleed on his brain that was linked to a fall at home. He had fallen in October. Lula is 79 years old. His doctors say the surgery was successful and the Brazilian president is in stable condition. In Edmonton, the death of a young security guard is prompting calls for enhanced training and safer working conditions. As Julia Wong tells us, the 20-year-old was working alone in an apartment building when he was shot and killed last week.
It's unimaginable.
It's hard for Gagandeep Singh Guman to grasp how Harshandeep Singh died. Last Friday, the 20-year-old security guard was shot and killed in an Edmonton apartment building while on the job. 2 people have been charged with first-degree murder. Guman is the family spokesperson.
This was his 3rd day on the job of the night of the unfortunate, unbearable incident happened.
Singh had been in Canada for 18 months on a student visa, and he wasn't even supposed to be working that day. Guman says the young student from India was covering a shift for a coworker.
Harshandeep was placed there, was deployed there with zero training, with no partner, no equipment to defend himself.
Former police officer Dan Jones is a justice studies instructor at Norquest College. He calls Singh's death an unnecessary loss of life.
And if you're that new and by yourself in a high crime area, I think that's just unfortunately a recipe for disaster.
In most places across Canada, you can become a security guard after a 40-hour course, which can sometimes be done online. Mike Byrne, a security expert, says that training should be more thorough.
I would like to see more on-site drills, more on-site practice in that sense, giving guards a sense of what is it like to be stressed.
Singh's loved ones are also calling for better training so his death will not be in vain. Community members are working together to return his remains to family in India. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Canada Post says the latest proposals from the Postal Workers Union are pushing the two sides further apart. CUPW gave some details on that proposal in a bulletin to its members. The demands include wage increases, a cost of living allowance, and more job protections. The union says it wants Canada Post to seriously consider its proposals. It says they include demands voted on by members. The postal strike is now in its 26th day. This year's class of Nobel laureates are being honored today. A special ceremony for the Nobel Peace Prize winner has already started at Oslo City Hall in Norway. And in a few hours, the remaining 2024 laureates will be honored in Stockholm, Sweden. Canadian Geoffrey Hinton is splitting the Nobel Prize in physics for his work on artificial intelligence. He spoke to CBC News Network this morning.
This is the result of 50 years ago having an idea of a problem that needed to be solved and just sticking with it for 50 years, even though most people in the field of AI and computer science said that what we were doing was nonsense.
Hinton is scheduled to formally receive his Nobel Prize shortly after 10 a.m. Eastern Time. There will be a watch party at the University of Toronto where Hinton is Professor Emeritus. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime. CBCnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, sitting in as your host today. Here's what's coming up on this hour of the show. A Winnipeg chiropractor accused of voyeurism is now under investigation after the regulatory body discovered hidden cameras in his treatment rooms. The I-Team's Caroline Bargout will be here to talk about that story right around 7:50. Don't call them grease monkeys. Coming up, we'll tell you about some unique mechanics in training, putting in the heavy work to ensure our economy is running, and why they say they deserve a little more respect. But first, how do you feel about paying more in property taxes? And that's the question we're asking Winnipeg homeowners as Mayor Scott Gillingham gets ready to present the first draft of the 2025 budget. Coming up on Information Radio. 11 minutes after 7 o'clock, time for news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, Syrians in Manitoba continue watching news following the collapse of the regime of Bashar al-Assad with mixed emotions. Karim Abid is a filmmaker in Winnipeg. He lived in Aleppo until 2016. He calls it an uncertain time now as his two brothers are still in prison in Damascus. He says he is afraid because he doesn't know if they're still alive. Others with connections to Syria say they are optimistic as the country rebuilds. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells joining us from the CBC Manitoba News Desk. Quick school note from the Prairie Rose School Division. Schools will be open and classes resume in all regions today, but the buses are canceled, so parents should make other plans to get kids to school. Abby Adiemi is already here in class with us. He's got the forecast.
It's in session. We have snow in the forecast today. Current temperatures will range from -8 down south to -17 in the northern part of the province. We're looking at wind chills, making it even feel colder this morning, and we also have that risk of frostbite in many regions, especially in the northern part of the province. But right now in Winnipeg, it is -9. We're seeing light snow outside. The forecast says this period of snow will stay with us throughout the day. We're expecting about 2 centimeters accumulation once the system passes through, and then it will be chilly with light winds from the north. We're going to see highs around -8, though it's going to feel colder. And then tonight, some clear conditions will roll in, but you will be seeing some local blowing snow in most of the open areas. And I just need to tell you that we will be dropping to around -26 later tonight, and the wind chill is going to be feeling like -38, so you might want to bundle up. In the western part of the province, similar conditions. We're going to see snow and cold conditions, similar conditions in the Parkland region, the Interlake region. Up north, we're going to see extreme cold in Flin Flon and the Pa, and for Thompson and Churchill, windy conditions, snow all day. The wind chill is also something to take into consideration. So it's more like a frigid start to the next couple of days that we're going to be getting.
Well, you look like you're ready for it, Abby.
I just bundle up. A good cup of cocoa, a good cup of tea should keep you warm.
That's the way to do it. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that Abby's got his red and black Canadian-style plaid on. He's got one of those hats with the fur lining and the ear flaps, so he's ready to go for this weather for sure. And a pro tip, too, if you watch Abby's forecast on YouTube, you'll see all the maps, all the temperatures. So do try tuning in on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Kevin Nipitobo is in the control room, and he is producing that this morning. Here in studio is our show director, Corey Funk, looking at the roads. Good morning.
Good morning. What you also don't see is that actually when he's not teching or doing weather, he's also chopping wood in the studio. I keep telling him to stop because it's distracting, but he just says, I got to keep that fire going for home. So I
budget cuts. We got to keep the heat going.
Exactly. Things are expensive. Heating can get expensive. In terms of the roads out there, a couple things to keep an eye out for. So Chief Peguis and Main right now. So actually southbound Main, the median lane, it's blocked completely right now at Chief Peguis. There's a down traffic standard in the intersection. The lights are flashing red in all directions. You want to treat that as a four-way stop. So it might be a little slow going through there this morning. As well, update, Abno-Jimikana and just past St. Mary's, we mentioned earlier. That's actually now been cleared. So no worries going through there. Highways are looking way better than they were yesterday, but might still be a little bit treacherous. There's no closed highways, but Highway 75, just a heads up, that is still being reported as covered. So may want to go a little slower than normal. It might be some icy patches in some parts. If you see anything else going on out there, though, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
It's 7:15. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass. Well, Winnipeg homeowners will have to put aside more money to pay next year's tax bills. The first draft of the 2025 city budget is out tomorrow, and CBC News has learned it calls for a 5.95% property tax increase, and that's the highest increase since 1990. It would raise more than $44 million in additional revenue for the city. So how do Winnipeggers feel about paying more? CBC's Bartley Kivas asked homeowners Jack Stewart and Lee Henningsen.
What do you think about a 5.95% property tax?
It hurts. Hurts the budget, hurts everything. Going to buy groceries, do whatever, it hurts. The city could cut back on more things that are in their budget that isn't needed so much as hitting the homeowners with the property tax, which stops you from doing a lot of things. And it's not like they're coming and asking us. City council doesn't come and ask what you want, they just do, you know. You see throughout the city, crime's up, everything's up. It doesn't get better, it's getting worse in the city.
Generally, I don't have a problem with property taxes. Where it goes is more the issue. I find the city wastes a lot of money on things, and I've noticed a decrease in taxes over the time I've been here because I don't have to pay for the school taxes, which is probably the only tax I agree with paying. I don't mind paying for kids to go to school, but when I see construction being paid by the city and it is clearly not doing it in an efficient manner, why do I want to pay for it?
Those were the voices of some Winnipeg homeowners speaking with reporter Bartley Kivas about the property tax increase. Shirley Delorme Russell owns two properties, her primary residence and one that she rents out. And she joins us now in studio. Good morning, Shirley.
Good morning. Good morning.
So it's been a tough year financially for a lot of families with inflation, so many rising costs. How do you feel about a possible 5.95% property tax increase?
So first of all, I really don't like the, hey, there might be this. Clickbait. You know you might. But now that that's there, I prefer to wait until after it's actually said. But I actually have no problem paying higher property taxes because okay, I saw Bartley Kivas' video and it said on average, maybe $120 per year per average homeowner. I have $120 and $120 by everybody pools the money. Mm-hmm. And pooled money is way better than no taxes and the roads are falling apart and libraries can't open for enough hours and all that kind of stuff. I'd rather pay a little bit more myself, pooled with everybody else, so that we could use all that money together for something better.
Yeah, so you see it as like a social responsibility for people in the city.
Oh, yeah. I mean, honest to goodness, my property taxes haven't gone up forever, however many years, right? And like the roads are, some of the roads are awful. Raw sewage was spewing into the Red River, right? Like stuff like this. I am okay. Things cost more. They cost more. I'm okay. I want the money to be spent efficiently and responsibly, but I'm okay to need a little bit more money to pay for things in the city.
So this property tax hike, what does it mean for you and your family's finances?
Well, I am already very tight. I'm a student. I'm going to be a librarian.
Oh, wow.
And
congrats.
Thank you. So everything is tight. It just is. And in my tight home ownership, I just have to be crazy cheap and also super responsible, which means I'm getting so much better at making meals out of whatever's already in the house, right? Which means I'm getting so much better at walking further to catch the bus, which is a city service that is not great in my neighborhood, instead of driving, because that will cost more money, right? My rental, I do own a rental, which used to be my former residence, and it pays for itself. So my tenant pays what it costs to run the house, and already the cost of property tax is built in there. And so my tenant's rent won't be going up. And I super work to make sure that my tenant's rent, which is super not far from here where I used to live forever, is reasonable and can be paid.
But wouldn't you have to raise you said, what they're paying covers it now, but if the price goes up of the taxes, wouldn't you have to raise the rent?
So right now I have about a $48 profit per month. And
that's not a lot.
Nope. Because I work very hard at making sure it's reasonable rent that a family could afford. That $48 is still enough to cover a property increase of $120 a year if that happened, because that would be $12 a month. So there's room in there.
Yeah. And I mean, you touched on changes you'd like to see in the city and what kind of public services you think could be improved. Give us a sense. Do you have a little list, a wish list for the city to spend these tax money on?
Yeah, I think that all things being equal, and we can see what we need to spend on, I would always choose to spend money on equally infrastructure and rec services. We need our roads to work. We need our bike trails to work. We need our things to be shoveled and plowed. We need to not drive through crazy potholes. But we also need libraries to be open and rec centers to be funded and community centers to get support.
And would you want the city to be more clear about where all the money's going?
100%. 100%. I expect to see a budget. I expect to see what we're going to increase, what we're going to decrease, why we need to cut X, Y, or Z, how we're going to be able to increase X, Y, or Z. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective. That's Winnipegger Shirley Delorme Russell. She owns 2 properties, her primary home and the one that she rents out. And she was speaking to the city budget that's coming out tomorrow. And CBC News has learned that it calls for a 5.95% property tax increase.
La mémoire est courte. L'été est cruel et les filles sont belles, et les filles sont belles. Notre histoire est longue, mais la nuit est nouvelle. Et les filles sont belles, et les filles sont belles. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire d'être ensemble si on n'est pas ensemble? Est-ce que ça suffit de rassembler nos souvenirs? Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire d'être ensemble si on n'est pas ensemble? Est-ce que ça suffit de s'attendre? Je voudrais partir maintenant, te retrouver, tu me manques tellement. La mémoire est courte, l'été est cruel. Et les filles sont belles, et les filles sont belles. J'étais dans la foule, j'ai raté ton appel. J'ai raté ton appel. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire d'être ensemble si on n'est pas ensemble? Est-ce que ça suffit de rassembler nos souvenirs? Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire d'être ensemble si on n'est pas ensemble? Est-ce que ça suffit de s'attendre? Je voudrais partir maintenant, te retrouver, tu me manques tellement. sont belles et les filles sont belles.
Sweet morning music. Charlotte Cardin and Alyosha Schneider with Ensemble, talking about how much you might miss somebody. 7:25 right now. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, and it's time for sports news. Scott Reguer joins us from the CBC Sports Desk. Good morning, Scott.
You know, Emily, they say everything sounds better in French.
Yeah.
They were right.
It's true.
That song in English would have been very pretty. But
Yeah.
please, that was,
Yeah, it's like it's
now I'm all
poetic.
chilled that I was hyped up for hockey. You know, now I just want to have a croissant and, you know.
A good strong coffee.
Espresso, yeah.
Sounds good. Well, here, let's get back into it. Let's start with
Okay.
hockey, where the Jets are back in action tonight, Scott.
Yeah, and after losing to Columbus on Sunday, the Jets will try and get back in the win column this evening when they play Boston. After starting the season in historically impressive fashion, the Jets have been pretty mediocre since, and one big reason for that is a lack of scoring. Winnipeg led the league in that capacity for the first month and a half, but since then they've been in the bottom 10 in that category, which probably explains why prospect Brad Lambert's been sent back down to the Manitoba Moose while Nikita Chiropractor was recalled. Chiropractor leading the Moose in scoring at the moment with 13 points in 19 games. So something to watch out for tonight as the Jets play against Boston. Puck drop is at 7 o'clock.
Okay, to swimming now, one of my favorite sports, where for the first time since her star turn in Paris, Summer McIntosh is back in the pool.
She is. The Toronto teen, who won an unprecedented 3 Olympic golds this summer, is competing at the Short Course World Championships. They're taking place in Hungary in one of McIntosh's favorite pools, where she actually shot to stardom as a 15-year-old. CBC asked her what she's been up to after the Olympics.
I took around 3 weeks off of swimming and just really try to celebrate all that I had done this past summer and just try to take some time off swimming to kind of recollect and focus on where I want to continue on with the sport. So now, the last few months, I've just been training really hard with my teammates and focusing in on some new events. So I'm really excited to get racing again on the world level. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Just what her competitors want to hear. She's taking on new events. At this meet, Emily McIntosh is going to compete in the 200-meter backstroke. Previously, she's only backstroked as part of the medley. And today you can watch Summer actually in a completely different event, the 400-meter freestyle final. That will go at 10:30 this morning Central Time. Summer won silver in that discipline at the Olympics. Now, this is a short course pool, as mentioned. That means it's just 25 meters long, so half that of those used in the Olympics. So a lot more turning involved. Double the amount, of course. Summer needs all the challenges she can get, though, so she'll be in the pool not too long from now.
Yeah, even with a lot of turns, Summer has got it down. So around the same time, the Northern Star Award for Canada's Athlete of the Year will be presented. Who do you think's going to win it, Scott?
Well, remember, Emily, Summer McIntosh wasn't the only breakthrough performer for Canada in Paris. The country managed 27 medals, the most it's ever managed at a non-boycotted games. So gold medalists from Paris include the likes of hammer throwers Cameron Rogers and Ethan Katzberg, canoeist Katie Vincent, breakdancer Phil Wizard, he was great. They'll all get consideration for the Northern Star Award. Then the Olympics aside, how about Bombers running back Brady Oliveira, who just became the 4th Canadian ever to win the Outstanding Player Award. And Connor McDavid, him.
That guy.
Nearly led the Oilers to the Stanley Cup, Emily, after scoring at a rate we haven't seen since Gretzky and Lemieux were around. So plenty of very worthy candidates for the Northern Star Award, although in the end, one athlete stands above the rest.
McIntosh has got her nose out front. Summer McIntosh gets the Canadian hat trick of gold with an Olympic record time.
That's my buddy Rob Snook with a hockey analogy in describing what was the summer of summer, with her set to excel in the Short Course World Championships and a near lock, Emily, to collect today's Northern Star Award. McIntosh can make a reasonable claim to the winter as well.
Oh, my goodness. She's unstoppable. She's my vote, too. I think she should win it. Thank you so much, Scott.
You betcha.
That was Scott Reguer joining us from the CBC Sports Desk. Still to come on Information Radio. Without them, our roads, mines, and railways wouldn't run. CBC's Jim Agapito spoke to some people who are training in mechanics. The news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is -9. It is December double digits now. A high today of -8. We do have a bit of snow still, 2 centimeters expected today. The sky clears this evening, and then the cold really moves in. A Winnipeg chiropractor is under police investigation for voyeurism after hidden cameras were found in the treatment rooms of his Portage Avenue practice. The cameras were discovered by the Manitoba Chiropractors Association. While investigating a complaint, Dr. Robert Stitt had inappropriately touched a patient's back. The details were revealed in a search warrant document obtained by CBC News. Anne Kavukian is the former Privacy Commissioner of Ontario. She says patients expect privacy when they're being treated unless they consent in writing.
If the camera is on while the patient is disrobing and putting on a gown or something, all that's being captured. So the most personal information, your body, what's going on, what you're doing as you're changing, that's all being captured.
Stitt's office is now closed, but the association won't say if he is still licensed to practice because their regulations forbid disclosure. No charges have been laid, and police continue to investigate. You can hear the latest on this story coming up in the next half hour right here on Information Radio. Syrians in Manitoba continue watching news following the collapse of the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Karim Abdid, a filmmaker in Winnipeg, has mixed feelings. He lived in Aleppo until 2016. He calls it an uncertain time now as his 2 brothers are still in a prison in Damascus. He says he is scared because he doesn't know if they're still alive.
Frankly, I'm afraid and happy, and it's mixed feeling. I was happy until they reached the Sednaya prison, but now I have no feeling about that, just waiting to see anything about my brothers.
Others with connection to Syria say they are optimistic as the country rebuilds, saying even if it is still bad, it can't be as bad as it was in the 13 years of civil war. Some Winnipeg homeowners are not enthused about the idea of higher property taxes. Mayor Scott Gillingham is expected to present the first draft of the city budget tomorrow. Sources tell CBC News the budget will include a 5.59% increase, the largest property tax the city has seen, the tax hike the city has seen since 1990. Jack Stewart lives in Crescentwood.
Hurts the budget, hurts everything. Going to buy groceries, do whatever, it hurts. The city could cut back on more things that are in their budget that isn't needed so much as hitting the homeowners with the property tax, which stops you from doing a lot of things.
The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says Winnipeg has lagged behind other Canadian cities for years when it comes to hiking property taxes. To New York now, where prosecutors have charged the suspect in last week's shooting of an American health executive with murder. Last night, police in Altoona, Pennsylvania held a news conference. They say 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was found inside a McDonald's restaurant and arrested by Officer Tyler Fry.
He was wearing a blue medical mask. We asked him to pull it down. Me and my partner and I recognized him immediately, just from what we saw in the media with photos, videos. Didn't even think twice about it. We knew that was our guy.
The victim, Brian Thompson, was gunned down in New York City. Investigators say they found a handwritten 3-page document indicating the suspect had some ill will towards corporate America. Mangione is being held without bail. He made a brief court appearance last night. R.J. Martin was his roommate in Hawaii.
Beyond shocked. It's unimaginable. I was roommates with him, friends, hiked, went to yoga. Unfathomable, knowing the kind, person that I saw and knew.
Last night, the suspect's family released a statement saying, "We only know what we have read in the media. Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson." And Canadian computer scientist Geoffrey Hinton is in Stockholm, Sweden today, receiving his Nobel Prize.
This is the result of 50 years ago having an idea of a problem that needed to be solved and just sticking with it for 50 years, even though most people in the field of AI and computer science said that what we were doing was nonsense.
Hinton and co-laureate John Hopfield were announced as this year's Nobel recipients back in October. They're being honored for their research in the field of machine learning. Hinton's work has earned him the nickname the Godfather of AI. He is a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, while Hopfield is a professor at Princeton University. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 8, and you can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
A wonderful moment of vindication if people were saying his work was nonsense. Now look where AI is.
No kidding, hey? Showed them.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you so much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells from the CBC Manitoba News Desk. Quick note from the Prairie Rose School Division. Schools are open. Classes resume today in all regions, but the buses are canceled. So please make other plans and arrangements to get to class. And already at the top of the class is Abby Adeyemi with a look at the forecast.
Yeah, we're looking at the cold front sweeping in cold across the regions. Today's forecast for Winnipeg and surrounding areas, we're looking at light snow up to 2 centimeters expected. That's added to what we have on the ground already. It will be chilly. We're going to see temperatures only get to around -8 today. The wind chill will make it feel even colder. And then tonight, we're going to see some clear conditions. Temperatures will be dropping to around -26 tonight. The wind chill will make it feel close to -38. So there's a risk of frostbite in play here, as tomorrow we'll be bringing some frigid conditions. Currently, Winnipeg, we are at -9 with light snow outside. Heading west to Brandon, -11. Light snow was seen. Expect snow throughout the day, plus what you have on the ground already. You should be seeing about 2 centimeters accumulation, high of -6. It will feel colder with the wind chill factored in, and it will even get chillier as you get into the night. In the south central part of the province and the Pembina Valley regions, we're looking at temperatures around -9. We should see periods of snow, also 2 centimeters expected. Highs would be similar to Winnipeg, around -8. Dauphin is sitting at -9. We're seeing light snow already. For the Parkland region, we should see this snow system end around the noon period, followed by clearing. Though the snow that came down will then be blowing around in the afternoon period. We'll see temperatures drop to around -19. So be prepared for cold conditions throughout the day. We do have that risk of frostbite in play. Gimli is sitting at -11. For the Interlake region, we'll see snow today. Also 2 centimeters expected to add to what's on ground already. Your high will be around -9. The temperature will feel colder with a light snow tapering off tonight. In the Pamphlet Flum, we're looking at temperatures already crossing into the -20s. Cloudy skies, you're seeing snow will come with that. Then it will be followed by a mix of sun and clouds. It's going to get breezy with northwest winds, and temperatures will be dropping to around -22. The wind chill is going to make it feel like -35 this morning, so you might want to bundle up if you're heading out. Moving north to Thompson, we're also in the range of the -20s. -20 in Thompson right now. We're seeing drifting snow. This will end around the noon period, followed by a mix of sun and clouds. Now, that's a similar condition we're seeing in Churchill, where the temperatures are actually at that -22 at this time. It's going to be breezy from the northwest. Temperatures will drop to -21 later. With the wind chill factored in for Thompson and Churchill, we're looking at -34. There's a serious risk of frostbite, like within between 10-15 minutes on exposed skin, so you might want to cover up. Overall, much of the province will see wintry conditions, and then the southern regions might be seeing warmer temperatures compared to what we're seeing up north. And Winnipeg today, light snow, cold temperatures will dominate the day, and we're just going to be at -9 and -8 for today.
Okay, not so bad in Winnipeg. Up north, do bundle up, though. That's dangerously cold.
Dangerously cold.
Thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adeyemi. He's also our studio technician, and with him in the control room is Kevin Nipatebo, who produces the CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. And joining us now in studio is Corey Funk, show director and traffic reporter.
Yes, and there's a couple things to keep an eye out for. Well, actually, two things right around the main Chief Peguis area. So first off, all morning, southbound Main Street, right at Chief Peguis, that median lane has been blocked by a down traffic standard, and the lights are also flashing red right now in all directions. So as you can imagine, things are pretty backed up. Heard from Dave earlier that actually westbound Chief Peguis, because of that, is just slow going, but it is moving slowly but surely. Also, if that wasn't enough, if you're just kind of heading northbound on Main Street, just kind of right outside the Kildonan golf course there, so it's just before Chief Pegwis, just got a call from Thomas, just got off the phone from him now. Said there was actually a 2-car kind of fender bender, multi-vehicle collision there, and that's actually got kind of the 2 left lane blocks, so all you got is the curb lane, so you kind of got to skirt around there. So heads up there. That seems to be the only really major issue out there. If you see anything else going on, highways seem okay so far this morning. Haven't heard of any major issues, but give me a call if you do see something going on. That number 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
That's Corey Funk with the traffic report. It's 20 minutes to 8. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, filling in today as your host. Well, they always keep the railways running, the miners digging, and the road equipment humming to make sure Canada's economy runs. And they're in desperate need. So who are these Jacks and Jills of all trades? They're called heavy-duty equipment mechanics or technicians, and there's a big need for them as tons of these highly skilled people are set to retire in the near future. That's why 27-year-old Red River College Polytech instructor Shelby Levitsky is encouraging people to join this vital trade. And she spoke with CBC's Jim Agapito while he was visiting that campus for Communities in Focus. Okay, we are having some technical issues with that tape, but we'll try to get that on in a little bit. Jim Agapito speaking with some people in the heavy-duty mechanics trade training over at Red River College. It's 7:41. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg. You can also check us out wherever you are in the world. Maybe you're leaving Winnipeg and you want to keep up to date with news back home. You can always listen on the CBC Listen app. You can also check us out on YouTube. And here now is that report with Jim Agapito.
A lot of the perception with our trade is that we're grease monkeys, we bang things with a hammer to fix them, and that it's a job that requires little intelligence. We have to be the Jack or Jill of all trades. We're working on HVAC systems, we're working on body work, we're working on the electrical side, we're working on 3-phase systems sometimes, so the job that a normal electrician would do. We're working with computers, programming those computers. So it takes a higher level of intelligence to actually not only work on those systems, but fix them and reprogram them. A lot of our students are visual, hands-on learners. So for them, it's very exciting to keep their hands busy and keep their mind busy at the same time, and they're looking for that pace.
My name is Cornell Wasalius. I am studying heavy-duty mechanics here at Red River College. I am 19 years old. While I've always wanted to work on engines and be able to fix things, and especially in today's society where a lot of things are throwaway versus repair anymore, and I think it's important to be sustainable and to be able to fix these things. I've never been a very academic person, but I've always loved to work with my hands and being able to see things. I'm a very visual learner. So I think it was a clear decision that I could come here and get my hands dirty and work with things, and I enjoy every minute of my schooling. All infrastructures are built on people being able to repair and maintain these things, and with the lack of tradespeople in today's society, because a lot more people are going towards university education and everything, so there's a lack of people that have these skills, and so it's really important that young people get out and start doing these things, because soon we won't have a lot of the older tradesmen that are retiring.
You drive down Route 90 in Winnipeg and there's billboard after billboard after billboard posting that they have positions open for technicians with great benefits, great pension plans. They're really trying to entice people into this trade because we are so desperate. We have 4 female students this year out of 76, and that's huge for us. Normally we only have 1 female student a year. So it's been increased this year, which is very exciting. My uncles, my dad, my cousins were all mechanics. I come from a farming family, so I've been exposed to it my whole life. It's something that's always excited me. And I decided to go into it in high school, actually. And my choices were either nursing or being a mechanic. And I chose being a mechanic. I got to try it out in high school for about a half a term. I fell in love with it and I haven't turned back since. They're excited to be able to work on their own vehicles or maybe build their own race car or rat rod. It's just the toys in it for them that they can be able to afford or purchase with a higher paying salary that they get being a mechanic in this trade, but also knowing how to work on it and fix it themselves. So they're really excited about that aspect.
New car painted in a soothing shade of gray. The interior of an entire house in classic beige. Cheese aged from a bunch of black and white cows.
I'll buy that, and apparently, so will you. Brilliantly Bland, Why Boring Sells, on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
7:45 right now. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1 from Winnipeg. It's -10 with light snow at the airport. I'm Emily Brass, sitting in as your host today. Well, Half Moon Run is on a mission to finish off a series of previously unreleased songs. In fact, you could say they're tying up some loose ends. This next track was recorded for the band's 2023 album Salt, but it didn't make the final cut. Here's Half Moon Run with Loose Ends. Coming up on 10 minutes to 8 o'clock, that was Half Moon Run with Loose Ends.
New this month on CBC Gem.
You're trending.
Fantastic.
You retweeted a white supremacist.
Retweeted a what? An author goes viral and is hit with a major plot twist, a son he never knew.
I'm on a quest to understand who I am and where I come from.
Now they're both on a journey to find themselves.
A beloved children's author getting to know his long-lost autistic son. There could be a book in it.
Could be a documentary.
The heartwarming series, Austin. Watch free on CBC Gem.
It is 7:50. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Well, a Winnipeg chiropractor is under police investigation after cameras were found hidden in fake sprinkler heads. And the case now has the attention of the province. The I-Team's Caroline Bargood is here in studio to talk about that. Good morning, Caroline.
Hi, good morning.
So how did the police learn about these hidden cameras?
So according to search warrants, this all started in January when the Manitoba Chiropractors Association received a complaint about a Winnipeg chiropractor who had allegedly inappropriately touched this patient. The patient said that he touched her back inappropriately. She filed a complaint, so the association sent an investigator to investigate. And the doctor, which his name is Robert Stitt, he denied the allegations. He said he didn't do anything wrong. And in fact, he told the investigator that he could prove he didn't do anything wrong because he had video of the interaction. So he starts sifting through all this video, and the investigator's sitting there and notices several women, at least 3 women, in various stages of undress. He then called Winnipeg police to investigate possible voyeurism. Anne Kavukian is the former privacy commissioner in Ontario. Now, she said patients in any medical setting expect privacy when being treated unless they consent to it in writing.
You would never have a camera in a room while you're treating a patient and they're not aware of it. That's absurd. I mean, believe me, I've been to many doctors and chiropractors in my lifetime, and I would be outraged, as was most people, to know that there was a camera actually on while I'm being treated and I'm not aware of it, and my consent has not been obtained. No transparency, no consent, no privacy.
She says that written consent should be obtained from all patients and that the videos should not be stored for any reason because they contain people's personal medical information.
Wow. So what is the Manitoba Chiropractors Association saying about it?
Well, the Manitoba Chiropractors Association refused to comment on this story, and they won't disclose whether the investigation resulted in any findings against Stitt or whether he's still licensed to practice. Now, part of the reason is because it's in their act. There has to be privacy, and so they can't tell us. So unlike physicians and nurses, chiropractors don't yet fall under the Regulated Health Professions Act, which requires disciplinary findings, if there are any, to be disclosed to the public. And we only learned about this case because we came across this search warrant document which had all of this information. Now, Harry Caton, he's an international advisor on professional regulation. He's based in London, England. We spoke to him over Zoom. Now, he says the nature of this job specifically of chiropractors carries a higher risk because they tend to work alone with partially dressed patients.
Transparency is a great antiseptic. It cleans up organizations, all kinds of organizations should do, especially those that are in the public interest, should do their activities in the clear light of day and not in the dark or in secret.
Now, he believes that chiropractors should be part of the Regulated Health Professionals Act, and soon.
Well, and are there any plans to include chiropractors in the act?
Yeah, there are. The province says that that's always been the plan and they are working towards it. But it takes time. So we told Health Minister Uzoma Azagwara about this case, and they said that the province can't fast track that process, but is looking at other options.
We are exploring all options right now to see what we can do. Right, this is a very important issue. The moment that we were made aware of this matter, we started working with our legal teams and our experts to see what options are available so we can take quick action and not delay the ability to make sure that Manitobans have more transparency, more information, and can feel that safer when they're accessing these services and restore that trust that has very clearly been broken.
The minister wasn't able to give a timeline for when that might be.
Okay. And meanwhile, what's Dr. Stitt saying about all of this?
Well, we tried contacting Dr. Stitt in various different ways. We left him messages, we texted him, we emailed him, and he has not responded to any of our comments. We don't know if he's facing any disciplinary action from the Chiropractors Association. He has not been criminally charged. Winnipeg police say they are still investigating. We wanted to know if he's still practicing or even if he's still allowed to practice. The association wouldn't answer those questions, but on his social media, he posted back in January that he was looking for work and he is open to work either in Winnipeg or in Singapore, either as a chiropractor or a chiropractic assistant.
Interesting. Well, thanks for this excellent work, Caroline.
Thank you.
That's Caroline Bargood, a reporter with CBC Manitoba's I-Team, and she'll have more on the story tonight on the CBC News at 6 on TV. You can also read about it on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. And if you have a tip for the I-Team, you can call our confidential tip line. That's at 204-788-3744. You can also email iteam@cbc.ca. Well, Corey Funk is in with an update on the traffic.
Yeah, but there's a couple things to keep an eye out for. Just got a call from Fred. So westbound and eastbound Highway 15, he says very slippery right now out there. So just be quite careful. People are going pretty slow. It's actually pretty backed up because everyone's taking it real slow as well. Northbound Main Street right now, there's been a couple issues. Chief Pegwis in particular, Main Street and Chief Pegwis southbound in the median lane has been blocked by a down traffic standard all morning on Main Street. Crews are on, we're on scene, they repaired it, but the lights are still flashing red in all directions. Pretty backed up on westbound Chief Pegwis as well, going over the bridge. And then even just a little bit south of that, if you're heading northbound on Main Street, just outside of the golf course there, you heard also from Thomas that there's a two-car collision and that it's just the right lane that you can get through to get around that. So if you see anything else still going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, that number 204-788-3093.
And before you go, Corey, what's it like out on the sidewalks? And
yes. So actually, I ran in this morning, and it was actually not too bad. Like it was a little bit more snow covered, which I won't complain because it wasn't like trudging, but it was just kind of grippy, and because they were plowed yesterday, so it was actually not too bad on the sidewalks. Bike lanes also looked like they were plowed as of yesterday, so it's pretty bikeable as well overall, from what I saw.
A good day for active transportation.
Good day to get around.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
That's Corey Funk. He's also our show director, and Heather Wells is standing by with the news headlines.
Good morning. Well, some Winnipeg homeowners say the city should be looking at cutting spending, not raising taxes. Sources tell CBC News Mayor Scott Gillingham will announce a 5.95% property tax hike in tomorrow's city budget. We're going to hear from a homeowner coming up at 8:30. As well, members of the Syrian community in Winnipeg have mixed feelings about the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Mohammed Jumaili, former president of the Syrian Assembly of Manitoba, says it's a big change for the Syrian community around the world. Happiness tempered with concern about rebuilding the country. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells. She was joining us from the CBC Manitoba newsroom. Well, before we get to national news, I'm going to tell you what's still to come on the next hour of the show. Yesterday, we talked about a new version of the ABC song. You might have remembered. You might have heard that. Well, that's taking the education world by storm, and we're going to hear what listeners had to say about it. People did call in, had a lot of comments about this new ABC song. So we're going to listen to that. And also, are you feeling overwhelmed about the number of Christmas gifts you still have to get? Or maybe you're not feeling too excited to go to the holiday office party. The holiday season is supposed to be a festive time of year, but it can deepen feelings of isolation as well as stress. So coming up after 8, we're going to speak with a therapist for advice on how to navigate the holidays if you are feeling stressed. Also, there is a note from the Prairie Rose School Division that classes are back in session, schools are open, but the buses are not running. So families need to make other arrangements to get kids to school if you're in the Prairie Rose School Division. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. It's minus 10 right now with light snow at the airport. And today in Winnipeg, I'll give you the forecast here. Periods of snow, 2 centimeters expected. There's going to be a light breeze and a high of -8. I'm turning now to Brandon over there. Periods of snow, 2 centimeters expected with some local blowing snow this afternoon. It's going to be pretty breezy with some gusts up to 50 kilometers an hour, especially around noon, and the high of -6. And in Thompson, clearing this morning. Breezy, but the temperature is going to fall to -27 this afternoon. With the wind chill, it'll feel like near -39. So bundle up out there. Keep it tuned in to Information Radio. World Report's coming up next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
If you found yourself in the past month stressed out, constantly grazing Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, Elif Shafak wants you to take a break. Elif is an exiled author from Turkey, now living in the UK. She'll be here to tell you about her new novel and the difference between information and knowledge.
Let's spend less time with information because it's not doing us any good.
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Neighborhood gatherings are often something to look forward to in the holiday season, but getting to know your neighbors is good for your health as well. And communities across Canada are finding new ways to make that happen. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. We are learning more this morning about the man arrested in the shooting death of U.S. health insurance executive Brian Thompson. The 26-year-old suspect was arrested in Pennsylvania following a massive 5-day-long manhunt. Steve Futterman has the latest.
Just hours after the arrest, we have a strong person of interest. Officials in New York last night formally charged Luigi Mangione with murder.
We believe at this point our investigation is leaning toward he was acting alone.
The 26-year-old suspect made his initial court appearance in Pennsylvania, not far from the McDonald's restaurant where he was recognized from pictures shown on TV and in newspapers. New York Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch.
The suspect was in a McDonald's and was recognized by an employee who then called local police.
Although it's still not specifically clear what led him to allegedly kill United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, we are getting some hints. Mangione was carrying a manifesto.
It does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
United Healthcare is referred to in the manifesto. Those who have known the suspect for years say they would have never expected this. R.J. Martin was his roommate when they both lived in Hawaii.
Beyond shocked. It's unimaginable.
Mangione came from a wealthy family and was known to be an excellent student. He was valedictorian of his senior high school class and delivered the graduation speech.
It's been an incredible journey.
During the past few years, Mangione had been dealing with painful back issues, and in recent months this year, seemed to cut himself off from friends and family. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Syrian rebels are vowing to find those who have committed war crimes under the former Assad regime. The leader of the HTS, or Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, says many of those wanted are accused of torturing prisoners. President Bashar al-Assad fled the country after rebel forces took over the capital last week. Some warn of an extremely delicate political future, but others say this could mark a new beginning. Geir Pedersen is the UN Special Envoy to Syria.
But for that to happen, that there needed to be immediate de-escalation, that we should not see a fight between the different armed groups that have now entered into Damascus, and also taking into account that, of course, there are parts of the country that are not under the control of these armed groups.
Violent clashes continue in northern parts of Syria today between Turkish-backed forces and Kurdish fighters. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland will be making a housing announcement later this hour, but reporters might have more questions about the fall economic statement planned for next week. It's coming very late in the season, and there's a lot riding on it for the Trudeau government. Let's bring in Janice McGregor from our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, remind us what's in this fall economic statement.
Marcia, it's mid-December now, and the finance minister has yet to release the public accounts, essentially the government's books, which tell us where things stand. But based on the math that the Parliamentary Budget Officer shared earlier this fall, the Finance Minister appears set to blow right past her previous pledge to keep the federal deficit below $40 billion. And not only because of all the social welfare programs rolling out like dental care and pharmacare, pressure from the incoming Trump administration has apparently forced the government's hand into a $1 billion package of additional equipment and personnel resources for police and border services agencies to crack down on the movement of illegal drugs and people smuggling. The writing on the wall for future defense spending also features big, bold billion-dollar figures. And then you throw in a populist affordability measure like the GST holiday that starts this weekend. And you see why, when the finance minister rises in the House next Monday to show us her books, the red won't just be on the holiday decorations.
So these economic updates are always significant, but the Trudeau government is under particular pressure right now. Tell us about that.
Well, look, because the House of Commons has been filibustered all fall, the Speaker had to intervene to ensure MPs even got to the series of votes that we're going to see this evening to approve over $20 billion worth of supplementary spending estimates. It's not at all clear whether this government can strike the deal it's going to need to pass implementation bills for whatever it's putting in next week's update. The Conservatives have offered to help pass a border package, but Freeland's admitted that as things stand, she doesn't have a partner to even actually deliver on the $250 GST rebate checks that she previously announced.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa. More emergency departments were forced to close this past weekend in Ontario. At one point on Saturday, 5 rural ERs in southwestern Ontario had to shut their doors. As Julie Ireton tells us, many people are worried this is part of a trend that could lead to permanent closures.
I have tried my best to prevent those closures, so sometimes living here a little bit.
Emergency nurse Iris Rawlings works at this small town hospital in Carleton Place. It's one of at least 38 hospitals in Ontario that has had an ER or urgent care centre closure since 2022. Most are in rural areas, the majority due to nursing shortages. Dr. Alan Drummond works in an Eastern Ontario emergency. He wonders if a new model is needed.
Those days of every small town having an emergency department are regrettably over until we can develop some resilience in our healthcare system in terms of human resources.
Drummond suggests improving ER and diagnostic services at a central rural location and closing others.
It makes no sense in rural close environments to struggle to maintain 24-hour service.
Natalie Mera is executive director of the Ontario Health Coalition. That group campaigns for health improvements. She says rural residents, including many seniors, deserve emergency services in their communities.
It makes no sense that you've got literally thousands of elderly people driving all over the province to access health care.
The Ontario government has pledged hundreds of millions of dollars to train more nurses, but that will take time. Physicians in Northern Ontario warn of a worsening healthcare crisis for rural and northern residents. They say these populations have worse health outcomes and poorer access to healthcare compared to the rest of the province. Julie Ireton, CBC News, Carleton Place.
The search for unmarked graves at former residential schools is sensitive, emotional work. Often it begins with ground-penetrating radar, but on First Nations with densely wooded areas or fields, specialized dogs are being brought in to search the site. Rebecca Zandbergen has more. And a warning, some details might be distressing to listeners.
Kim Cooper and her shepherd Reki are training at an unmarked historic graveyard south of Ottawa. Reki runs the field, nose tight to the ground. Suddenly, after pacing one area, she stops, barks, and looks expectantly at Cooper.
Our best case scenario is that we get 3 dogs agree on exactly the same spot.
Cooper is the team leader with the Ontario Search and Rescue Volunteer Association. Her dog is certified in human remains detection. And since 2023, she and a team of handlers and dogs have been working with First Nations right across the country. 10 so far.
So the archaeological method is about layering the results of the different tools.
So survivor interviews, ground-penetrating radar, and now dogs. Dogs who can smell the chemicals that permeate the ground when a body decomposes.
So the more tools you get that agree that a given spot is of interest, the higher the confidence is that this is something that we need to look at.
At a recent Chiefs Assembly in Ottawa, Wajishkanigan Nation Chief Chris Skeed said dogs have been to the former residential school in his community near Kenora, Ontario, twice.
We knew of heavily wooded areas that we wanted to search as well.
Next month, Skeed's community is presenting a final report on what they've learned, but one thing is for sure.
We do not exhume any bodies. That's just not how we do things in Wajishkanigan.
Rebecca Zanbergen, CBC News, Ottawa.
American poet Nikki Giovanni has died.
This is not a poem, no. It is a celebration for the road we have traveled. It is a prayer for the roads yet to come. This is an explosion, the original Big Bang. This is about us, celebrating ourselves, and a well-deserved honor it is. Light the candles. This is a rocket. Let's ride.
Giovanni came of age during the civil rights movement. Her poetry is described as being filled with the spirit of revolution. She wrote more than 25 books. Some collections, including the book Black Feeling, Black Talk, sold thousands of copies. She appeared on the late-night television and she taught at multiple schools, including Virginia Tech. A statement released by her friend says Giovanni died yesterday after her third cancer diagnosis. Nikki Giovanni was 81. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Emily Brass, sitting in as your host today. Here's what's still to come on the show. The Canadian Mental Health Association reports that 52% of Canadians experience feelings of anxiety, depression, and isolation during the holiday season. Coming up, we'll speak with a therapist who will give us some advice on how to manage that holiday stress. Also, we gave you the call and you called in, you delivered for us. We'll hear what Information Radio listeners think about a controversial new version of the ABC song. We spoke with an early childhood education trainer from Red River College yesterday who explained why the old version might be challenging for young people and why this new version might work better. We'll hear the listeners' thoughts on that coming up on Information Radio. It's -10 with light snow at the Winnipeg airport. Heather Wells is standing by with the headlines.
Good morning. A Winnipeg chiropractor is under police investigation for voyeurism after hidden cameras were found in the treatment rooms of his Portage Avenue practice. The cameras were discovered by the Manitoba Chiropractors Association while investigating a complaint Dr. Robert Stitt had inappropriately touched a patient's back. We're going to hear from the I-Team coming up. And some Winnipeg homeowners say the city should be looking at cutting spending, not raising taxes. Sources tell CBC News Mayor Scott Gillingham will announce a 5.95% property tax hike in tomorrow's city budget. We'll hear from a Wolseley homeowner coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
That's Heather Wells from the CBC News Desk. And joining us now with a look at the forecast is Abby Adiyemi. What's it like out there today?
We're already seeing the double digits. I mean the minus in
double
most of
digits.
the regions. The north already seeing minus in the range of the -20s, while down south, around -10, -11 in most of the regions. We should see snow today. Wind chills will make it even feel colder, and there's a risk of frostbite in most of the regions, especially in the further northern parts of the province. So you want to bundle up for today. Winnipeg -9 we're seeing in the city, but -10 at the airport. The forecast for Winnipeg and surrounding areas calls for periods of snow throughout the day. We should see about 2 centimeters of snow. It will feel colder due to the wind chill, and temperatures will be reaching -8 for today. And then some clear conditions we're going to see tonight as temperatures will be dropping to -26. With the wind chill factored in, it's going to make it feel like -38. So be cautious of risk frostbite on exposed skin. In other regions, we're looking at western Manitoba, seeing chilly temperatures with snow similar conditions in the southern, south central region and the Parkland region. But looking up north, we're seeing cold and wind chill, which will be more intense for the Power, Flin Flon, Thompson, and Churchill. Already seeing temperatures around -22 and -23. With the wind chill factored in for folks up there, is already feeling like -36 this morning. So you want to take care. But right now, Winnipeg, we're at -9, and we'll get to -8 later.
Thank you so much, Abby.
Thank you.
That's Abby Adeyemi. He's also our studio technician, and with him in the control room is Kevin Nipatebo, producer of the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. And here in studios, Corey Funk, who's taking a look at the roads.
Yeah, the biggest issue this morning is right around Main and Chief Peguis. So all morning there's been a traffic standard that's been blocking the southbound Main Street at Chief Peguis in the median lane. The lights have also all been flashing red at that intersection, and that's actually been causing big backups on Chief Peguis. I heard that westbound Chief Peguis, Dave called to say it's backed up all the way to Henderson. So really, really slow going there. So as people treat that as a four-way stop. Also, if you're heading northbound Main, actually just before that intersection, right outside of the golf course there's also a two-car collision that's got both the left lanes blocked. So keep right to get around that. It's just the curb lanes open there. Otherwise, highways look okay. But if you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey. That's our show director and traffic reporter, Corey Funk. And you're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. And if you were tuned into the show yesterday, you might have heard us talk about a new version of the ABC song that's taking the educational world by storm. Here's what it sounds like.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. I like the ABCs.
Okay, so as you can hear, the individual letters are a little more clear than that famous elemento and the X, Y, and Z, which can sound like an N. That's what some of our instructor from Red River College had to say about the song yesterday. So we asked listeners what they thought about it, and here's what some of you had to say.
Hi, this is Andrea Firth. I think the new version of the alphabet song is great for pronunciation. It's the old one just rapid fires so quickly. It can be hard to pick out all the words, letters. I'm agreeing with that. But my concern is both versions that you used have the American pronunciation for the final letter in the alphabet. Canadians typically say Z. Americans typically say Z. And I think it's good if we can maintain our national identity in words as well as in culture. Thank you. Goodbye.
The ABC song change is a good one. I was one of those kids who remembered LMNOP. Please play it often, maybe once a day, every morning, so that we can learn it too and therefore do the best for our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Chris Templin. This is regarding the ABC song. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, sugar for your tea and jam for your bread, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, have your tea, then off to bed. I used to teach that one. Bye.
Oh, that's sweet. Another version of the ABC song for us. And we appreciate everyone calling. And you can call us anytime you have feedback that you want to share about our show. Our listener line is 204-788-3205. It's 17 minutes after 8 o'clock, and you're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 and 9 FM and 990 AM in Winnipeg. You can also check us out around the globe on the CBC Listen app, or you can check us out online on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. I'm Emily Brass, filling in today as your host. Well, the holiday season is already in full swing with just 2 weeks to go until Christmas Eve. That's sparking both excitement and and stress for some. New mom Michelle Ghazi reflects on how she manages.
So as soon as I start to kind of feel myself like going down this rabbit hole of like, oh, I need to get this, or I haven't done this, or just all those thoughts just start creeping in. I just like really have to be aware and pause and just do the whole self-talk and why I'm doing it, what my intentions are. And just kind of talk myself through it. And at the end of it, the conversation with myself is just something that aligns with the feeling that I want to create for myself and my family this season.
That was new mom Michelle Ghazi telling us how she navigates the stress of the season. Holiday anxiety. Many of us have it, and it's a specific type of stress that happens to a lot of people this time of year. And it's different from everyday stress, and understanding holiday anxiety and its effects on our mental health can help us manage it as well. We can refer to it as, quote, a soup for anxiety. A relationship and individual therapist Kelly Bernardin-Dvorak is here in studio to speak with us about how to navigate the highs and lows of the holidays. Good morning.
Good morning.
So in your role as a relationship therapist, how would you characterize someone who has holiday anxiety?
Stressed.
Yes. And so where do you think that stress comes from?
Pressure. Feeling like there's just too much to do and a lot of hope for how it'll all feel and look, and wondering if you can actually get there.
Yeah. And so is that something we even need to do? Think about getting there?
I mean, it does sound important, right? Like rituals and how we come together and celebrate. I think it does mean a lot to us. And I think that's why the pressure feels so strong. And I think it's the coming together of what really matters to a lot of folks, and the hope for it to be like that and have things not get in the way or fall off the table, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And so how is that type of anxiety different from other types of stress?
I think it's probably not a lot different from stress you feel at other times, but it does feel really compressed at times like the holidays, when lots of folks, and this isn't everybody's experience, but lots of folks feel like I have this to do and there to go and this to buy. And there's just so much that maybe it just feels really compounded.
Yeah, there's that tight timeline. A lot of us wait until December to start getting ready. And that holiday anxiety can include sadness. You might be thinking about, past holidays or people who aren't around anymore, excitement and social anxiety. In your experience, are there also some physical symptoms people might feel when, they're going through those emotions?
I want to be careful to say there's no universal anything, probably. I don't know. I'm hesitant to say ever, but I think what I've heard from a lot of folks is things like dread, things like just a really, really busy mind, things like not being able to focus because there's so much to focus on that you just can't decide where to start. So just that feeling really overstimulated or really overbusy.
Yeah. And then I guess your heartbeat might go up.
Heartbeat, yeah.
Sleeping, might that be affected? And
I think a lot of folks, I've heard that from a lot of folks, they're just a lot overthinking at night when they're trying to rest. They just can't get that rest that they're hoping to find.
I think we've all been there. And then some common culprits of holiday anxiety can be spending time with family and, that illusion of the perfect Christmas everyone hopes to pull off. How can we maybe take some of that pressure off ourselves and better manage holiday anxiety?
Probably I would just say maybe starts with being honest with ourselves. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm feeling. This is what's really important to me. So honesty with ourselves, and then maybe honesty with others. I'm feeling stressed about coming over this year, or saying to our loved ones, this is a bit different than other times. This is where I'm at. That honesty first with ourselves and then maybe with others too. That could probably go a long way.
I mean, would that be a good way to handle invitations that we're feeling uncomfortable about? You start to get office parties, friends have get-togethers, and, maybe you're feeling pressure to go and you don't really want to. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to taking maybe a little bit of time. Like the proverbial deep breath is a proverb for a really good reason. Take a pause, take a moment, and just check in with yourself. Why do I feel pulled to do this? What about it feels important to me? Is that the right thing for me at this time this year? Taking that little check-in time.
And if you do have to decline the invitation for those reasons you just mentioned, do you have some tips on how to do that with friends and families?
I think a lot of us are probably better at that than we give ourselves credit for. But at a time like this, I mean, if we're issuing invitations, I think a lot of us know that people are pulled in so many directions. So the idea that somebody's going to be so disappointed or it'll be so hard, it might not be as difficult as we think to have the host hear a bit of a no. And like they might be okay with that. They might be expecting that everybody's busy and not everybody on their list is actually going to come.
Yeah, good to remember for the hosts out there who might be stressing, thinking about people not coming. Is there a tradition in your family, Kelly, that you've adapted and, you wanted to change because of stress and anxiety?
Well, I talked with one of the program, coordinators yesterday, and we had a good laugh because a family story just came up, and it was about my son, actually. And so we had a tradition in our family where we ate, on Christmas Eve. My family background is French Canadian, and so we had tourtière, the traditional French Canadian meat pie, and a bouillon with some homemade noodles was kind of our traditional meal on Christmas Eve. And a number of years ago, my son just said, like, "Are we going to keep eating this all the time on Christmas Eve, like forever?" And my response was tears. Like, I just didn't even have words because it was just so deeply held for me, this tradition of this is what we do at this time. This is what we eat. And it had just been unquestioned for me, But I think it was just a moment for me to reflect on my own assumptions, my own expectations, and be like, no, things can change, And I think that's a really good thing, is that it was valid. I think that I felt really caught off guard and had the tears. They were okay, but also we could change, and I could change.
And that often goes along with the réveillon, where you stay up and go to midnight mass and eat
that
like
is
at 1 in the morning.
The tradition. Réveillon, at 1 in the morning,
But it's not set in stone. You can adapt it.
It's not. And we have adapted it, and all is well.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Kelly. We appreciate all your advice. That was Kelly Bernardin Dvorak speaking with us about holiday anxiety. And she has her own independent practice called Formation Therapies. And she's part of the Jonah Counseling Collective.
Ready, Rudolph?
Ready, Santa. Enjoy this festive season.
You coming? Why, to the North Pole, of course.
Enjoy the magic.
Happy birthday.
Hilarity.
I triple dog dare you.
We're all in for a very big treat.
Enjoy the excitement.
Tremendous, gargantuan, spectacular.
And wonder.
From the moment I met you, it's been an adventure.
Enjoy the holidays. Watch free on CBC Gem.
26 minutes after 8 o'clock, and is it Christmas until you hear Michael Bublé? Canadian superstar and 15-time Juno Award winner Michael Bublé will be hosting the Juno Awards next year, and he'll be returning to his hometown of Vancouver to do it. The 54th annual Junos take place March 30th at the Rogers Arena, and during that event, Sum 41 will be inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. Well, here's a brand new holiday tune from Michael Bublé, and this one features country star Carly Pearce. Here's Maybe This Christmas.
I've been running all my life. I've been trying to get it right. Sentimentally, the thing I do well. But it's Christmas time again, and I'm missing all my friends. A million miles away, a toast to their health. Now it's a shot out in the dark. I'm just wishing on a star, and I wish I knew just what to do. Lord, I think I on this cold and silent night. I'm just hanging on, it's all that I can do. And all the snow falling down on the city and the good souls below. It ain't the same when it comes down and turns into rain. 'Cause it's Christmas time, I can't be alone.
You've been running through my mind, and no matter how I try, when the bells of old St. Pat start to ring, and it's so hard for me to hear you're alone this time of year, and the bitterness that cold must bring. And when you're sitting in the dark and it's falling all apart, I'll be lighting up a candle for you. I know it's sad to be alone. I wish you joy and peace and hope. Wish you all the love that your heart can hold.
And all the snow falling down on the city and the good souls below. It ain't the same when it comes
That's
down.
Michael Bublé with Carly Pierce and Maybe This Christmas. Shout out to our listener in Anchorage, Alaska, who gave us a call on the listener line. The news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's -9 in downtown Winnipeg with a little bit of light snow. Our high today is -8, a couple centimeters of snow, and then once the sky clears this evening, the cold moves in. A low tonight of -26. A Winnipeg chiropractor is under investigation after the regulatory body discovered hidden cameras in his treatment rooms and called police. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargut reports.
Dr. Robert Stitt has been a chiropractor for more than 25 years. In January, a patient made a complaint to the Manitoba Chiropractors Association, alleging Stitt had inappropriately touched her back. He denied the allegations and told the regulatory body that he could prove he did nothing wrong because he had video of his interactions with the patient. The association called Winnipeg police after learning Stitt had hidden cameras in treatment rooms. All this information was detailed in search warrant documents police filed to seize those cameras and video recordings. Stitt's office is now closed, but the association won't say if he's still licensed to practice. No charges have been laid. Police are still investigating. Caroline Bargut, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some Winnipeg homeowners say the city should be looking at cutting spending, not raising taxes. Sources tell CBC News Mayor Scott Gillingham will announce a 5.95% property tax hike in tomorrow's city budget. Lee Henningsen lives in Wolseley. He says he'd rather pay more taxes to the province to fund education than give that money to the city.
Generally, I don't have a problem with property taxes. Where it goes is more the issue. I find the city wastes a lot of money on things.
Gillingham has hinted he will focus on road repairs and policing. The property tax hike would be Winnipeg's largest in 34 years. Members of the Syrian community in Winnipeg have mixed feelings about the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Mohammed Jumaili is the former president of the Syrian Association of Manitoba. He says this is a big change for the Syrian community around the world. Happiness tempered with concern about rebuilding that country.
I have a big optimism, to be honest. I know the future will be good. And again, everybody agree that the future, even if it's bad, it will not be bad like before.
Others say they are still worried, waiting to hear about loved ones who may still be in prison in Syria. New York prosecutors have charged the suspect in last week's shooting of an American health executive with murder. Last night, police in Altoona, Pennsylvania held a news conference. They say 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was found inside a McDonald's restaurant. The victim in New York, Brian Thompson, was gunned down outside a hotel on the sidewalk. Investigators say they found a handwritten 3-page document indicating the suspect had some ill will toward corporate America. Josh Shapiro is the governor of Pennsylvania.
Violence can never be used to address political differences or to address a substantive difference or to try and prove some ideological point. That is not what we do in a civilized society.
Mangione is being held without bail. He did make a brief court appearance last night. R.J. Martin was his roommate in Hawaii.
Beyond shocked. It's unimaginable. I was roommates with him, friends, hiked, went to yoga. Unfathomable, knowing the kind, person that I saw and knew.
Last night, the suspect's family released a statement. It says, quote, "We only know what we have read in the media. Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson." Canada Post says it does not see an end in sight for the nearly 4-week strike by thousands of its workers. The Canadian Union of Postal Workers recently sent over its latest list of proposals, but Canada Post says those proposals don't bring the two sides any closer together in a dispute that has brought millions of deliveries to a halt this holiday season. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said his government is putting pressure on the two sides to reach an agreement. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells from the CBC Manitoba newsroom. And a quick look at the forecast with Abby Adeyemi.
We're already seeing that patchy light snow outside, stuck at -9 at this point. We'll see this period of snow throughout the day, 2 centimeters expected, and then we're going to be dropping to around -26 for tonight. So be cautious of that frostbite on exposed skin.
Very cold night tonight. Thank you, Abby. Corey Funk has a look at the traffic.
Yeah, Chief Peguis and Main all morning, those lights have been flashing red. Also, southbound Main Street at Chief Peguis, you lose the median lane as well. Big backups all the way to Henderson if you're heading westbound on Chief Peguis this morning. Poor visibility around Centerport, I just heard, as well as pretty slippery around Highway 15.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
That's our show director, Corey Funk, and our studio technician, Abby Adeyemi, as well our Manitoba YouTube channel producer, Kevin Nipatebo. I'm Emily Brass. Marcy Marcusa will be back next tomorrow, and I'll be on Radio Noon until next Tuesday, starting tomorrow. And that's going to be my last day at CBC Manitoba. I'm leaving for New Brunswick, where I'll be the new morning show host in St. John. It's been a wonderful 6 years in Winnipeg. Thank you so much.
We're not wooing that you're leaving. We're wooing that congratulations.
Yes.
It's more like from MB to NB.
Yeah,
that's
MB
right.
to MB.
I hadn't thought of that. I like
There
that. I'll have
you
to use that
go.
in a rhyme. But I do appreciate Winnipeg. It's just been a fantastic experience living in this city. It's just so charming, so diverse. I've learned so much. I've gone all over the province with CBC and just as a tourist, and I appreciate everybody for listening and everybody who gave me so much support over the years. So thanks again. And again, I'll be on Radio Noon from tomorrow till next Tuesday. The Current's coming up next.